Chapter 609. Prime Minister, what does this brat mean by this? He's already at this level. Does he still have some tricks up his sleeve? Longkinba turned his head to look at Daluan Ruozan. His battle with Sun Luyue had consumed a great deal of stellar energy, and his armor was covered in scars, many of which had even been cut open, revealing the mangled flesh beneath. But even so, Longkinba had still maintained a vigorous fighting spirit. Daluan Ruozan said nothing while Hushu Wuzong slightly frowned. In the past, he might not have been so dismissive of Wang Chong, but he would have only given him a few more glances, just a few glances. But now was different. Wang Chong's battle halos could even have a significant effect on his Vairocana Buddha. And if what Wang Chong said was true and he felt that he could win this battle, not even Hushu Wuzong could maintain his composure. Although he didn't care about Wang Chong's individual strength, he couldn't help but care about the outcome of this battle. After all, his mission as a general was not to defeat his opponent, but to win. Daluan Ruozan, what do you think he means by this? To Hushu Wuzong's flabbergasted gaze, Hushu Wuzong actually turned to Daluan Ruozan. "Milord, do you really think that he can win?" Longkinba called out, a look of disbelief on his face. "It's better to believe that it's true than not." Daluan Ruozan deeply creased his brow, a pensive look on his face. "You've seen this brat's abilities. Although not every word he says is true, not every word he says is false. Moreover, at this stage, there's no need for him to use these little tricks. Pass on my order. All soldiers are to be on guard. In this period of time, have 10 groups of soldiers take turns keeping an eye on the Tang people. In addition, use kerosene to set up a campfire in the camp. All the blind spots must be illuminated. When the patrols go in and out, including Meng Shizhao's men, use the secret code. We can't give them the slightest opportunity." It had not been long since Wang Chong led the Tang people to disguise themselves as Meng Shizhao's people to attack Uzan. Daluan Ruozan did not want to make any mistakes at this time. If they allowed Wang Chong to successfully raid the camp and snatch more water, the chances of the Uzan Empire's strategy failing would increase with every day of delay. Wang Zhongxi had left the capital of the Tang dynasty. The current situation was completely different from the beginning. Now Daluan Ruozan was more anxious than Jelifeng. "Yes, your subordinate obeys." As soon as Daluan Ruozan's voice fell, a few Uzan messengers quickly received the order and left. "General, what should we do now?" On the other side, in a tent far away from Uzan's people, no one expected that two figures were gathered together. One was the ruler of Meng Shizhao, and the other was the general of Meng Shizhao. At this time, even Crown Prince Feng was excluded and had no chance to meet them, let alone others. "Your Majesty, you have seen the fighting power of the Tang people in today's battle. If we attack them by force, I'm afraid that we will suffer heavy losses. Even if we succeed, we will have to pay a huge price. The loss outweighs the gain. Daluan Ruozan has already destroyed their water source. On this point, Daluan Ruozan and I have the same view. Let's call a truce for 3 days. Although we don't have much time left, we have to wait." Duan Gechuan's voice came from the tent. The only general of Meng Shizhao had been hiding behind the scenes and was a man of few words. It was not until now that it was revealed that the real commander of this battle was actually Duan Gechuan, not Jelifeng. The key is the youngest son of the Wang family. If not for him, we would have won long ago. Jelifeng said. Now, whenever she thought of that boy, the youngest son of the Wang family, Jelifeng felt like there was a thorn in her back, and she couldn't even swallow her food. In terms of strength, for a strong warrior like Jelifeng, a warrior like Wang Chong was completely like an ant, not even qualified to carry his shoes. If it were any other place, Jelifeng could easily crush him to death. However, what Wang Chong was best at was not martial strength, but the most important thing on the battlefield, the art of war. Moreover, when the two armies fought, the barrier was clear. Wang Chong stood at the top of the mountain, surrounded by an impenetrable wall. Who knew how many experts were protecting him, including Wang Yan and Xianyu Zhongtong? Therefore, no matter how much Uzun and Meng Shizhao wanted to kill him, even the intelligent Daluan Ruozhen couldn't do anything to him. It wasn't that easy to behead the enemy's commander. Don't worry, in the final battle 3 days later, when the Annam Protectorate is completely wiped out, that youngest son of Wang Yan naturally won't be able to escape. Duan Gechuan said calmly. Did you see anything today, General? Zhao Yuofeng hurriedly asked, his heart thumping. Although it hasn't reached the level that your majesty thinks, it's not far from it. Duan Gechuan nodded. Although the Wang family's attainments in the art of war are unimaginable, even Zhangqiu Jianqiong can't compare to him. However, he isn't the true commander of the Annam Protectorate, and the Annam Protectorate wasn't personally trained by him. To be able to raise the fighting strength of the Annam Protectorate to this level in such a short time is already impressive enough. However, there are some flaws that can't be fixed no matter what. Duan Gechuan said calmly. An astonishing light flashed across his eyes, but it quickly dimmed, and everything returned to silence. The tent also returned to silence. This day was equally difficult for Uzun, Meng Shizhao, and the Tang dynasty. While the commanders of Uzun and Meng Shizhao were discussing countermeasures, the core commanders of the Tang dynasty were also gathered at the top of the mountain. However, this time, it wasn't just Wang Chong, the eagle, and Qin Shusun. Even Xianyu Zhongtong, Wang Yan, and Sun Luiyue were gathered at the top of the mountain. The 6 of them sat cross-legged on the ground in a circle. In the center was a crude sand table. Around the mountain in the center of the table was a map of the distribution of the Mengshi, Yusang army. Standing on the summit and looking down from above, it was far too easy to create such a crude sand table. Chong'er, no matter what, reaching this step is already beyond our expectations. Neither I, nor Lord Xianyu, will blame you. Wang Yan was the first to break the silence. The casualties had already been reported. In this battle, the Annam Protectorate had suffered significant losses. Including the reinforcements from Wang Yan and Wang Chong, they had originally had an army of nearly 100,000. Now, they only had 60,000 some left. And this was not the crux of the problem, but the water source. With the Annam Protectorate's water source destroyed and the gurgling water gushing out like a waterfall, even the slowest of soldiers understood the situation they were in. Lord Wang is correct. No matter what the result is, no matter what the outcome is, we will not blame you. Xianyu Zhongtong also consoled, his voice tinged with understanding. The Annam Protectorate had already been defeated on the shores of the Arai. It was already a miracle that they had been able to delay until now. The army of the southwest was currently beset by both internal and external threats. It was like a dragon trapped in shallow waters, in desperate straits. And the existences of Huishu Wuzong, Daluan Ruozhen, Zhelifeng, and Duan Gechuan had completely cut off their path of retreat. There was no need to say what awaited the Annam Protectorate. Correct, young master. No matter what, no one will blame you. At the very least, we've already made the Uzun and Meng Shizhao pay the price. Sun Luiyue was seated cross-legged on the ground as he spoke. Sun Luiyue was a taciturn man who never liked to speak. For him to say such words, it was clear that this youngest young master of the Wang clan had truly won his respect and approval. No. Father, Lord Protector General, I know what you're thinking. But this battle is still far from reaching the level you think it is. At least, not yet. A bright light flashed through Wang Chang's eyes as he suddenly put on a serious expression. Young master, there's no need to comfort us, Chen Shusun couldn't help but say as he patted Wang Chong on the shoulder. Uncle Chen, I'm not joking with you. Wang Chong shook his head, his expression extremely solemn. The words that I said to Daluan Ruozhen were not just for show, Wang Chong said. Buzz. In a flash, the summit was eerily still. Everyone stared at Wang Chong in shock. Chong'er, what do you mean? Wang Yan frowned. Not even he, as his father, understood what Wang Chong meant. Could it be that at this stage, there was still room to retaliate? Young master means that we can still defeat them? Sun Luyue asked in surprise. Although he wasn't particularly skilled in the art of war, he could still tell who was stronger and who was weaker, who was winning and who was losing. In the current situation, the water source had been destroyed. As long as Daluan Ruozan and the others held their ground, the Annam Protectorate was almost certain to lose. Moreover, the armies of the Tang dynasty were good at fighting on foot, not on horseback. If they abandoned the steel defenses of the mountain and went down the mountain to seek battle, they would be cutting off their own limbs. Uzan's men wouldn't even need 3 days to wipe out the entire army of the Annam Protectorate. Sixth uncle, you've misunderstood me. Wang Chong shook his head. War is never purely a battle between armies, but a continuation of politics. What decides the outcome of a war isn't just the fate on the battlefield, but also the outcome outside the battlefield. The battlefield of the southwest between the Tang dynasty and Uzan and Meng Shizhao has never been just this one place. At least, it's not for me. The group glanced at each other. Let alone Xianyu Zhongtong, even Wang Yan, his father, was somewhat dumbfounded. He had no idea what Wang Chong was talking about. War was war. To these pure soldiers, war had always been as simple as defeating the opponent in front of them. Everything else had nothing to do with it. As for war is a continuation of politics, not even a veteran general like Wang Yan had ever heard of such a theory, much less anyone else. The group surrounded Wang Chong, wanting to say something, but not knowing where to start. Chapter 610. The Eagle, do you still remember Li Sai? Wang Chong said no more, turning his head to the eagle. Bang! The name Li Sai made the eagle shiver like a bolt of lightning. Like the dark clouds in the sky scattering, the eagle seemed to remember something, and his expression became excited. Li Sai. That's right, how could he have forgotten Li Sai? When they had set out from the capital, the young master had far more people at his side. This was the young master's #1 general. Now that he thought about it, before they had even reached the Urai Plains and met up with the old master, Li Sai had led an army and been dispatched by the young master to carry out another mission. But after so many fierce battles and so much time had passed, even he had forgotten about Li Sai's army. Young master, you mean, Wang Chong earnestly nodded. The one with the most schemes wins and the one with the least loses. Since Uzan has the ambition of a wolf and wants to use the strength of Meng Shizhao and Jelifeng to deal with the Tang dynasty, he can't blame me for dealing with him. Since he wants to break off relations with the Tang dynasty, he should be prepared to break off relations. To Daluan Ruozan and Hushu Huaitsong, war might only be a battle in front of them, victory or defeat in a decisive battle, but to me, it has never been so. As Wang Chong spoke, his eyes shone with an unprecedented radiance. The Tang dynasty had flaws, the Annam Protectorate had flaws, but did Uzan not have any? Success was due to scoundrels, and failure was due to scoundrels. Daluan Ruozan had focused all his attention on his own weaknesses, but he had no idea that they also had massive weaknesses, even more severe than his own. It's about time. There should be a result by tonight at the latest. Under everyone's dumbfounded gazes, Wang Chong stood up, looked towards the west, and said something that no one understood. Strategizing in a tent, deciding victory from 1,000 miles away. Whether it was his father or Xianyu Zhongtong, neither of them understood that the true outcome of this war would not be decided here. It wasn't even determined by this battlefield. Even Daluan Ruozan didn't know that he had set up another battlefield for him. In contrast to this battlefield, on another battlefield, Uzan was utterly defeated. As for Daluan Ruozan, he still had no idea. War was cruel. This was a fact that every general should know. However, the reality that Wang Chong understood was far crueler than theirs. Li Sai. The rest is up to you. A gentle breeze blew past. Countless thoughts flashed through Wang Chong's mind, but he eventually calmed down. A sheep was bleating on the plateau, its eyes filled with confusion. Around it were mountains of rotting corpses of cows and sheep. There were no wounds on the corpses, but there were black spots that indicated that they had died of illness. Black smoke billowed up, burning ceaselessly on the plains. Such a pillar of smoke extended far and near, all the way to the horizon. It was a scene of doomsday. Not far from this sheep, around a ruined tent, a team of black-armored cavalrymen with shining swords and sabers were surveying everything around them. At the very front was a 2-meter-tall giant. He was a head taller than the others, and he appeared exceptionally muscular. He was especially eye-catching. "Sir, this is the 107th batch we've encountered in the past few days. Since 5 days ago, we haven't been able to find any herds of Uzan herdsmen anymore. It looks like we've achieved the desired effect. The plague has already spread throughout the entire Ngari Royal Highlands. What awaits them next is a huge disaster." Behind the muscular man, a cavalryman took 2 steps forward and suddenly said, "You can't bear it?" Li Sai said expressionlessly as he sat high up on his sturdy great one divine steed. "Yes." The cavalryman who spoke gritted his teeth and nodded. Behind him, the group of cavalrymen had the same expression. They were all elites who had been selected from the various clans. They were originally prepared for the battlefield for their clans. Although they hadn't entered the army yet, they had already considered themselves to be pure soldiers. If they were fighting on the battlefield, they wouldn't complain even if they died. However, after such a long period of time, what they had been doing was completely different. Even if they were pure warriors who thought highly of themselves, they still wouldn't do such a thing. As elite soldiers, they had only been doing one thing during this period of time, and that was to slaughter cows, sheep, herdsmen, and spread the plague. You guys, are all of you the same?" Li Sai turned around and looked at the elite cavalrymen behind him. Everyone lowered their heads. They had the same thought. "Sir, aren't you the same?" One of the cavalry leaders mustered up his courage and said. Li Sai instantly fell silent. This cavalryman was right. He had indeed doubted it before, and he had also felt a bit of pity. Moreover, unlike the cavalryman behind him, he was not only a regular soldier, but also a general of the regular army. A pure soldier was his definition of himself. But soon, Li Sai's eyes became clear. "If it was before, I would definitely think the same as you." Li Sai's voice was loud and clear. His first sentence attracted everyone's attention. "However, have you forgotten who we are? Soldiers. It doesn't matter who you were before. Now that you've entered this place and entered the battlefield, you are soldiers, pure soldiers. You represent others, not yourselves, but the Tang dynasty. Let me ask you, what is the most important thing for a soldier? Is it glory?" The group raised their heads and stared blankly at Li Sai. The most important thing for a soldier, of course, was glory. Was that not the case? "Sir, are you saying something wrong?" another cavalryman asked. Li Sai shook his head, but he remembered what Wang Chong had said to him in the brocade pouch. At that time, he didn't think much of it, and even mocked him. But now, Li Sai didn't think like that. "You're wrong. The most important thing for a soldier is to obey orders and be loyal to the Tang dynasty. When each of you steps onto the battlefield, your personal will, your honor and disgrace will become insignificant. If the Tang dynasty fails, even if you preserve your glory and die gloriously on the battlefield, what's the use? If the territory of the Tang dynasty is occupied by a foreign country, that would be the real shame. Compared to that, what are your feelings now?" Li Sai said in a deep voice. His deafening voice stunned everyone. No one would have thought that the person who should have felt the most pity for him would say such words. But there was no one who could refute him. Yes, if a soldier died gloriously on the battlefield, but the war was lost, what meaning was there in the greatest honor? Moreover, the southwest right now, it really had reached the point where Uzan and Meng Shizhao had invaded the territory of the Tang dynasty. For a moment, everyone was silent. Soldiers, once on the battlefield, should no longer have personal honor or disgrace, personal will, personal gains or losses. None of these thoughts should exist. Our goal has never been personal glory, but to defend the Tang dynasty, to defend the empire behind us. Have you ever thought, if the southwest is lost and Mengshi Zhao and Uzun occupy that place, what sort of scene will you see? What do you think they will do to the people of the Tang dynasty in the southwest? When the time comes, will they show mercy and pay attention to the glory of a soldier? Let me tell you, if we cannot win the war, when you return to the southwest, the scene will be exactly the same as here, and even more wretched. Li Sai's voice grew louder and louder, more and more intense. When the surrounding soldiers heard Li Sai's words, they all raised their heads in shock. They had never seen Li Sai so agitated before, but no one could refute his words. Correct. If this war was lost, the southwest would become a slaughterhouse for Uzun and Mengshi Zhao. Whether it was to establish their own prestige or to intimidate the people of the southwest into submission, Uzun and Mengshi Zhao would definitely carry out a merciless massacre. And the prolonged war and stalemate with the Annam Protectorate would cause them to vent their anger on the people of the southwest after the war. This was something that everyone understood. In this war, the Tang dynasty had no path of retreat. "Milord, a horseman," his face full of shame, prepared to step forward and say something. Suddenly, there was a clatter of hooves as a scout waved a flag and galloped toward them, dust roiling behind him. "Milord. The people from the Great Snow Mountain Temple have caught up." Buzz. The atmosphere suddenly changed. Everyone's face revealed a nervous expression. Even the warhorses under them were faintly uneasy and kept sneezing. Everyone looked at Li Sai, who was at the front of the line. They've come so quickly." Li Sai sneered, his expression frigid. In order to deal with the Tang dynasty, Daluan Ruozan and Hushu Wuzong had mobilized all the soldiers that the Ngari royal lineage had accumulated over the past 30 years. As a result, the Ngari royal lineage was currently empty. On the entire plateau, there were only a few herdsmen and scattered tribal warriors. In front of Li Sai and his Wuzi steel elite cavalry, they could not withstand a single blow. In all this time, Li Sai and the others had not encountered any decent resistance. However, the commotion that Li Sai and the others had caused on the Uzun Plateau was too great. This was not a war, but an unprecedented disaster. Even the entire Uzun Empire would be severely damaged. The consequences of the plague that Li Sai and the others had spread were so great that even the Great Snow Mountain Temple, which was thousands of miles away, was alarmed and sent out a large number of experts to hunt them down. In the face of these experts from the Great Snow Mountain, even Li Sai did not dare to take them lightly. Therefore, Li Sai had long sent the eagle to monitor them from afar. In addition, he had sent scouts everywhere to spy on them. On the boundless plateau, even the experts from the Great Snow Mountain Temple had nowhere to hide. They would often be discovered by Li Sai and the others from thousands of miles away. "Let's go." Li Sai patted the saddle and led the army at a gallop. "It's about time to check the next silk sachet." Chapter 611. The news from the highlands came much faster than expected. "Prime Minister, the quartermaster has sent word that we've run out of beef and mutton." In the tent, Daluan Ruozan was deep in thought as he stared at the sand table. Suddenly, an Uzun general rushed in and knelt on one knee. "What's going on? Do you need to report such a small matter to me?" Daluan Ruozan turned around and frowned, looking displeased. "Won't the Tai tribe send food over?" "Prime Minister, the Tai tribe hasn't brought any cattle or sheep over for more than half a month." "Oh." Daluan Ruozan finally turned around and asked suspiciously. "What about the Luozli tribe?" The Uzun did not rely on just one tribe for logistics. There were at least 20 to 30 tribes at a time, and over 100 during times of war. The Luozli tribe hasn't appeared for more than 10 days. "What about Dhaka, Raylan, and Feki?" Daluan Ruozan reported the names of several tribes. "We lost contact with them 8 or 9 days ago." Daluan Ruozhen creased his brow, vaguely sensing that something was wrong. This was not the first time the Uzun and the Tang dynasty had gone to war, and this sort of logistical problem had never happened before. Every tribe in the Uzun knew what food meant to the army. It was every tribe's duty to provide food to the army on time, so the Uzun would never run out of food like the Tang dynasty. It was strange enough for one tribe to fail to provide food to the army on time, but there was definitely a problem with so many tribes failing to keep up. Send someone to the rear to see what's wrong. Daluan Ruozhen's eyebrows twitched as he suddenly had a bad feeling. Report. Daluan Ruozhen didn't have to wait for long. Half an hour later, a messenger rushed into the tent in a panic. Prime Minister, we've just received news from the highlands. An army of the Tang dynasty has rushed to the highlands and started a massacre. They've even spread a plague. Now, all the tribes on the highlands have suffered heavy casualties. Countless cattle and sheep have died. The herald knelt on the ground with his head lowered. He didn't even dare to look at Daluan Ruozhen. Large beads of sweat seeped out of his forehead and dripped down. What? Daluan Ruozhen's body shook violently. He grabbed the messenger and shook him violently. What nonsense are you talking about? How could such a thing happen? Prime Minister, it's true. A member of the Jaeger tribe escaped from the plateau. I've already confirmed it with him over and over again, there is no doubt about it. The herald knelt on the ground. His face was pale, but his voice was incomparably firm. Every word was incomparably clear. Those people killed their way into the highlands more than half a month ago. Moreover, they've sent people to seal off the passage down from the highlands. No news can be sent out at all. All the tribesmen who wanted to send news died on the mountain path. He only managed to escape with great difficulty. More than half a month ago. Daluan Ruozhen's heart sank. Didn't that mean that the Annam Protectorate led by Wang Yan and Xian Yuzhongtong was still trapped in Lion City? Wang Chong. In a flash, a thought flashed through Daluan Ruozhen's mind. He subconsciously thought of the young figure at the peak of the opposite mountain. If Wang Yan and Xian Yuzhongtong were both trapped in Lion City, then the only one who could do all this was Wang Chong. Daluan Ruozhen's heart suddenly turned cold. He took advantage of a loophole. More than half a month ago, Daluan Ruozhen's heart was still only Lion City and the Annam Protectorate inside. Meanwhile, the tens of thousands of reinforcements led by Li Zhengyi in the north had already been defeated by the army led by Huishu Wuzong. On the road south, there were layers of Uzun cavalry guarding it. Daluan Ruozhen had never imagined that Wang Chong would break through the Uzun's defensive line at this time and even send an army to kill their way into the highlands. The one who laughs in the end, laughs the best. Daluan Ruozhen's entire body turned cold. The only thing left in his mind was Wang Chong's last words. Following that, more and more details were dug out. Daluan Ruozhen's face grew paler and paler, his expression more and more unsightly. The situation on the highlands was much more serious and terrifying than he had imagined. Sheep plague. Daluan Ruozhen had never imagined that Wang Chong would use this method to deal with him. Not against people, but against the cows and sheep on the highlands. No one on the highlands would die from this sheep plague, but Daluan Ruozhen would rather Wang Chong deal with his own army. The people on the highlands could not do without beef and mutton for 3 meals a day. Even the highland barley was eaten with beef and mutton. Furthermore, unlike the Tang dynasty of the Central Plains, the cows and sheep of the Uzun were raised in large herds. Each tribe had hundreds of thousands or even millions of cows. Once a plague broke out, it would be an unimaginable disaster. Prime Minister. Prime Minister. A voice sounded near and far. Daluan Ruozhen shook his head and suddenly woke up. When he opened his eyes, the messenger was still kneeling on the ground, motionless and in the same position as before. Got it. You may leave. Someone. Inform King Mengshi Zhao that I have a request. At a time like this, the only thing Daluan Ruozhen could think of was Mengshi Zhao and Jelifang. Mengshi Zhao and the Tang dynasty were of the same lineage. If there was someone who could solve the crisis on the highlands, then Daluan Ruozhen could only think of Jelifeng. What? Plague. Bonfires blazed in Mengshi Zhao's camp. The torches illuminated the people in the tents clearly. After hearing the reason for Daluan Ruozhen's visit, Jelifeng's eyes were filled with shock. Even a mighty ruler like Jelifeng would never have thought that such a thing would happen on the Uzhen highlands. Someone actually thought of attacking the hinterlands of Uzhen and invading the highlands at this time. This news was like a slap to everyone's face. Wang Chang's military strategy was unconstrained and marvelous. It had already surpassed everyone's imagination. Great Minister, I understand what you mean. No matter what, as an ally, I will do my best to help you. However, our Mengshi Zhao people mainly rely on rice, and we also eat pork. We don't have many cows or sheep to begin with, so plagues are even rarer. Therefore, when I first learned medicine from the Tang dynasty, this kind of unorthodox prescription for sheep plague was not on the list of things I learned. Not only that, I did not learn any of these unorthodox prescriptions. Jelifeng tried her best to be tactful. In fact, Jelifeng could be sure that even in the Tang dynasty, it was definitely not easy to find a veterinarian who could treat sheep plague. This kind of sheep plague was really too rare among the farming people. Understood. Then, Daluan Ruozhen thanks Your Majesty in advance. Daluan Ruozhen said. Your Majesty, bad news. The people of Uzhen are fighting with our people. Just as the two were talking, a messenger from Mengshi Zhao suddenly rushed in anxiously. Shua, in an instant, everyone's eyes turned to look at him. The food shortage in Uzhen had finally caused a problem. Under the stimulation of hunger, the people of Uzhen, who were known for their ferocity and belligerence, naturally turned their attention to their fellow allies, the people of Mengshi Zhao. Due to the language barrier, a fight quickly broke out between the two sides. When Jelifeng and Daluan Ruozhen arrived, the commotion was quickly quelled. However, everyone knew that this was just the beginning. Young master, they really are fighting. At the top of the mountain, a long flagpole danced in the wind. Under the flagpole, the eagle and Wang Chong stood together, looking down the mountain. The eagle's face was full of joy, while Wang Chong was silent. Young master, it seems that Li Sai's strategy is really working. The eagle looked at Wang Chong, said beside him. The eagle knew everything about Li Sai. Wang Chong had said earlier that if a fight broke out between Uzhen and Mengshi Zhao, it meant that the people of Uzhen were running low on food. In other words, Li Sai's operation behind their backs had been a complete success. Wang Chong nodded. In the night wind, the two strands of hair at his temples danced incessantly. In the dark of the night, they had already stood here for a long time. From the top of the mountain, they had already seen at least 17 fights in the light of the fire. To say that nothing had happened between Uzhen and Mengshi Zhao, Wang Chong would never believe it. War is cruel. Now it's up to Daluan Ruozhen to make his choice. The Annam Protectorate had been forced into a desperate situation due to the water problem. Now, the morale of the army was dropping. Wang Chong could clearly feel this change. But now, without a sufficient supply of cattle and sheep, the people of Uzhen were running low on food. They were in the same situation as the Annam Protectorate. Now, there was no longer an advantage. It all depended on who could last longer. Young master, do the people of Uzhen really not eat rice? If it's just food, with the wealth of Mengshi Zhao, they can definitely provide a lot of food. The eagle suddenly thought of something and frowned. That's impossible. Wang Chong laughed. The eating habits of the people of Uzhen aren't that easy to change. For example, if you only eat meat for 3 meals a day and don't eat rice, can you get used to it? Also, unlike us, the people of Uzhen don't have the habit of growing rice. In other words, they have never eaten rice before. But, doesn't Mengshi Zhao still have pork? If it's just meat, can't pork be used as a substitute? Old Eagle hesitated for a moment. There are so many people in Uzhen. 3 meals a day. How many pigs do you think Meng Shizhao keeps? It's just a drop in the bucket. Wang Chong said calmly. The eagle was stunned and couldn't speak for a long time. That's right. Pigs were different from cattle and sheep. Cattle and sheep could be left to graze freely in the wild, but no one would raise pigs like that. Therefore, the number of pigs would always be far less than cattle and sheep. With the wealth of the Tang dynasty, ordinary people could barely eat pork for a few meals a month, let alone Meng Shizhao. Meng Shizhao's habit of raising pigs was far from the Tang dynasty. Even if they could barely provide for Meng Shizhao, how much could they provide? For how long? Chapter 6:12. Wang Chong only smiled. The eagle had clearly understood. In this campaign to the south, Wang Chong had carefully considered and researched every one of his strategies. If he had not been certain that the sheep plague would be effective, he would never have made such an arrangement. Turning around, Wang Chong slowly vanished from the summit. Although Li Sai's surprise army had been effective, the Mengshi, Yusang army had not retreated. As long as the problem of water was not resolved, Wang Chong would not be able to relax. No one could help him in this matter. The imperial court could not help him, nor could Su Yiqin. No one could help him. He could only rely on himself to think of a solution. Let me tell you, my words are in order. If I say that you're not allowed to get close to the people of the Wang clan, then you're not allowed to get close to them. If you don't listen to my advice, be careful that I don't become merciless. The palm of a middle-aged man slammed heavily on the table with great force. Wang Chong could never have imagined that while he was in trouble in the southwest, in the distant capital, Su Yiqin, the future king of logistics that Wang Chong had predicted, was also in trouble. By the way, I've already ordered for those people sent by the Wang clan to be driven out. You're forbidden from leaving for 3 months. The middle-aged man had a stern expression, the veins on his forehead bulging. It was clear that he was in a state of rage. Big uncle. Su Yiqin raised her head to look at the middle-aged man, her expression as cold as ice. The matter between me and the Wang clan is my personal matter. It has nothing to do with the Su clan, and it has nothing to do with you. Don't meddle in my business. Bastard thing. Even at a time like this, you're still saying such things. Su Henian was infuriated, his hand raised and ready to strike. You dare. Su Yiqin was unafraid. She was not her big uncle's person. No matter what, today's matter had gone too far. Su Zhongnian, look at the fine daughter you raised. King Qi has already visited twice. Han, and Rong, were stripped of their official titles because of you. Su Zhongnian, is this daughter of yours trying to destroy our Su family? Su Henian suddenly turned his head and harshly cursed the ashamed middle-aged man behind him. This person was naturally Su Yiqin's father, second master Su Zhongnian, as well as Su Henian's second brother. Although they were both stewards of the Su clan, Su Zhongnian's personality was the complete opposite of Su Henian's. Su Zhongnian hadn't learned the slightest bit of the Su clan's abilities. He hadn't been able to help the clan in the slightest, but he had caused quite a few disasters and slip-ups back then. If she hadn't given birth to a daughter, Su Yiqin, she wouldn't even be able to sit in her position. Qin, listen to your uncle. The Wang clan isn't related to us in any way. There's no need to offend His Imperial Highness Prince Qi for them. Su Zhongnian looked at his daughter, his voice soft and almost pleading. Big uncle, you dare speak of King Qi? Su Qiqin paid no attention to her father, Su Zhongnian. Instead, she turned to her big uncle, Su Henian. You still don't know. Many of the Su clan's descendants have been inexplicably stripped of their official titles or kicked out of the Bureau of Revenue, Bureau of Personnel, and Bureau of Agriculture. All of our Su clan's power is here. Do you know what this means? Not only that, 10 of the clan's 18 major trade routes have been severed, and 23 of the 68 branch trade routes have been severed. Have you looked at the clan's accounts? In just this month, the clan's income has shrunk, and it's still dropping. All of our income isn't even 40% of what it used to be. How many people does the Su clan have? Do you think that the daily expenses and the various trade routes don't need to be spent? Such a large clan can't even stop for a single day. You've actually reduced it by 60%. Take a look at these accounts for yourself. As Su Henian spoke, he took out a large stack of accounts from his sleeve and slammed them down in front of Su Yiqin. Our Su clan rose to prominence during the Sui dynasty. We experienced the fires of war and the various political storms of the imperial court. It was not easy for us to reach this day. We have truly experienced all sorts of tribulations. Do you not know what kind of person King Qi is? So now, do you really want to destroy our Su clan for the sake of an outsider? Su Henian's eyes blazed with fury, making no attempt to conceal his emotions. At any other time, the entire Su clan would have wanted nothing more than to pamper this proud daughter of the Su clan. Moreover, she was doted on by the old master. But this time, he had gone too far. Honor and Ronger were his two most beloved sons, and also the ones he had placed the greatest hopes on. In order for them to enter the Bureau of Personnel and Bureau of Revenue, he had paid an enormous price. But in a single day, for no reason at all, they had been stripped of their official titles and kicked out of the Bureau of Personnel and Bureau of Revenue. One could easily imagine the fury in Su Henian's heart. Su Yiqin said nothing, only solemnly picked up the Su clan's account books and began to flip through them one by one. She had always been intelligent and had long since begun to examine the clan's accounts for her father. She was no stranger to these things. Time slowly passed. Su Henian stood to the side, his face ashen, while Su Yiqin's father, Su Zhongnian, wore an uneasy expression. Su Qiqin was the only one who slowly flipped through the account book. Slowly. Su Yiqin's complexion grew more and more grave. How could this be? This is too despicable. Su Yiqin's complexion was pale, her entire body trembling. Her big uncle had said that 10 of the Su clan's 18 major trade routes had been severed, and 23 of the 68 branch trade routes had been severed. Their income had been reduced by 60%, but Su Yiqin was skilled in accounting. She discovered that the situation was even more serious than her big uncle had described. These accounts involved at least 11 major sales contracts, all of which were recorded in the Court of Judicial Review. If they were breached, the Su clan would have to pay an enormous price. This involved millions of taels of gold. Not only that, the Su clan's accounts clearly showed that someone had tampered with them. This matter could be concealed from others, from her big uncle, but not from Su Yiqin. Su Yiqin smelled the thick scent of a conspiracy. There was no doubt that someone was planning to move against the Su clan. And the only person Su Yiqin could think of was King Qi. How about it? You have nothing else to say, right? Let me tell you, in 3 months, if you dare to walk out of this gate and have any dealings with the Wang clan, don't blame me for turning my back on you. When the time comes, the clan will be enraged, and not even the old master will be able to save you. Su Henian saw that Su Yiqin's complexion had turned pale and knew that his words had an effect. Throwing down these words, he flicked his sleeve and left. Jay. Su Zhongnian glanced at his daughter, gave a long sigh, and turned to leave the room. Only Su Yiqin was left standing in front of the window, stunned and speechless. Walala. The moment Su Henian and Su Zhongnian left, a flapping of wings came from outside the window. A sliver of clarity returned to Su Yiqin's eyes. Raising her head, she saw that a gray messenger pigeon had at some point landed on the open window lattice. On the pigeon's leg was a familiar golden leggings. But unlike usual, there was a thin red string tied to the golden leggings. Su Qiqin's expression changed slightly when she saw the thin red string that had appeared. In the agreed signal, this was a signal that would only appear in an emergency. Su Yiqin undid the leggings and quickly opened the message. A line of words immediately entered her eyes. It was a simple sentence, but it made Su Qichin's heart sink. Big Uncle. King Qi. Plagued from within and without, countless pressures surged at her. In all her life, Su Qichin had never encountered such a situation. On one side was the clan that had raised her, and on the other side was Wang Chong, who had trusted her and entrusted his life to her. Su Qichin had to make a choice. Su Qichin's heart was racked with agony. She knew that King Qi would not give her too much time. Young miss, what do we do? Are we really going to offend King Qi for Wang Chong and send our clan to its doom? The delicate maid Huan Yan, who had been serving Su Qichin this entire time, worriedly said. She knew of her young miss's feelings for Wang Chong, but the nature of this time was different. King Qi was an imperial prince of the Tang dynasty, and his influence in and out of the court was deeply rooted. The Su clan could not afford to offend him. As a logistician family, the basic way to protect themselves was to build a good relationship with the royal family, not to antagonize them. In the past, there had been too many such examples. Yan, you can leave first. I need some peace and quiet. Su Qichin slumped back into her chair. She rested her forehead on one hand and remained motionless. For the first time, a trace of haggard expression appeared on that icy and beautiful face. Splash! Large streams of cold spring water poured out of the water bags without any hesitation. The Tibetan soldiers at the base of the mountain were even laughing heartily as they used the drinking water to wash their highland steeds and their armor. Large amounts of clear water flowed to the ground and even converged into small streams. Ha ha ha, so comfortable. Mengshi Zhao's cavalry carried buckets of water and poured it over their heads. This scene played out at the foot of the mountain every day from morning to night. But every evening, the water on the ground would be buried or sprinkled with poison, leaving no chance for the Annam Protectorate. On the mountain range, a restless atmosphere was pervading. Young master, Daluan Ruozan is too despicable. He knows that we lack water, so he sends people to the foot of the mountain every day to disturb the army with water. If this continues, I'm afraid we will collapse without a fight. Chapter 6:13. The Annam Protectorate's water shortage was already quite serious. Daluan Ruozan's surprise attack was effective. On the same day, Wang Chong's army ran out of water. Now, even high-ranking generals like Luoji had rough skin and cracked lips. It was obvious how serious the Annam Protectorate's water shortage was. The Annam Protectorate had less than a tenth of its original number of stoves, and the war horses' drinking water was restricted to the limit. The morale of the army had long fallen. Everyone was panicking. At this time, Daluan Ruozan still used drinking water to disturb the Annam Protectorate. Although this move is simple, it's quite effective. We don't have a good solution at all. The eagle looked at the foot of the mountain worriedly. The Tang dynasty's water shortage was no secret. Even the low-ranking soldiers knew that there was not much water left in the barracks. Every day, Daluan Ruozan would have people come to the front of the formation and wantonly use water to bathe and wash the horses, provoking everyone. They were already severely dehydrated. Under such circumstances, everyone felt their lips becoming increasingly dry and cracked. Their hearts were getting more and more thirsty. This was a completely uncontrollable instinctive reaction. Even though everyone knew that this was a battle of life and death, they still had this uncontrollable reaction. The eagle could feel the restlessness even from the top of the mountain. One could imagine how they felt. Kill the horses. Wang Chong suddenly said. What? The eagle was stunned. He couldn't react in time. Kill some of the war horses and use their blood to temporarily quench our thirst. This is the only expedient for now. Wang Chong said in a low voice. But, without the war horses, what will happen to young master's plan? Moreover, the Annam Protectorate doesn't have many war horses now. The eagle was stunned. He never expected Wang Chong to suddenly suggest such a strategy. In the previous battles, the mountaintop cavalry that Wang Chong had set aside had played a huge role. It could even be said that they had played a key role in turning the tide of the battle. Fengjie had led Meng Shizhao's most elite Dragon Sun Corps and had almost pierced through the Tang dynasty's defensive lines, killing their way to the summit. In the end, it was Wang Chong's cavalry who used a surprise attack to seize an opening and cut off the Dragon Sun Corps from the front to the back, breaking his edge. More than a third of the Phoenix Sun Corps had died in battle, and even Fengjie had almost died on the mountain. If it wasn't for his subordinates escorting him as he fled for his life. Without warhorses, the Tang dynasty would lose a lot of room to maneuver. Just kill some of them. Every day that he could delay was one day at a time. Now, they were competing to see who could last longer. Pass down the order. Now, the daily consumption is calculated by the drop. Unless it's absolutely necessary, you absolutely can't waste a single drop of water. Wang Chong said. For an army of 60,000 to be supplied with water by the drop every day, this was simply unimaginable for a regular army. But right now, there was no other way. If it were in the past, this sort of thing would absolutely cause a massive panic. But now, after Daluan Ruozen's incessant embellishment, there was actually nothing to worry about. This could be considered a wrong move. This subordinate understands. The eagle nodded. In addition, Daluan Ruozen's current situation isn't any better than ours. Under the banner, Wang Chong looked across from him and suddenly laughed. Daluan Ruozen had done his best, pouring pot after pot, bag after bag, bucket after bucket at the base of the mountain in front of all the Annam Protectorate soldiers, washing horses, bathing. But in his own situation, Wang Chong didn't even need to do anything, didn't need to imitate him, and it was already chaotic enough. There was a shortage of water, so he just had to conserve a little. Previously, he used to take 1 bag a day, but now he took 5 or 6 drops twice a day. 7 or 8 drops was enough, and he could endure it for a while. But without beef and mutton, what if he couldn't get used to the food of farming tribes? Ask people who ate beef and mutton every day to eat rice. Eat vegetables. That was what they called grass. Anyone else might have been able to endure, but Uzun was famed for his viciousness, courage, and belligerence. He wasn't the sort of person who could control his temper. Standing at the top of the mountain and looking down, the front of the formation was completely calm. But the rear of the Mengshi, Yusang army was in chaos. Even at this distance, Wang Chong could still hear the clamor. In a single day, Wang Chong had seen 17 or 18 fights, all of them between Mengshi, Yusang soldiers. Wang Chong could easily guess that Uzun's men were running low on food, so they had definitely turned their attention to Uzun's men. After all, Mengshi, Yusang were nominally allies, and Uzun had only sent soldiers for Meng Shizhao's sake. Alas, the two sides didn't speak the same language, so this became pure and unreasonable quarreling, intentionally finding fault with each other and even starting to fight. The gap between them only grew deeper and deeper. If this continued, Wang Chong wouldn't even need to do anything to see the Mengshi, Yusang army begin to wear each other down and suffer heavy casualties. Daluan Ruozen, no matter how monstrously intelligent you are, you still couldn't have imagined this. If you want to deal with the Tang dynasty, you'll have to pay the price. No matter what, Uzun will never be the victor. Wang Chong quietly said to himself as he looked into the distance. I need to calm down for a bit. The eagle, I'll leave this place to you. With these words, Wang Chong turned and vanished from the summit. At the base of the mountain, in his tent, Daluan Ruozen's situation was far more serious than Wang Chong had imagined. Letter after letter flew into Daluan Ruozen's hands like snowflakes. On the first day, countless warhorses and spies were traveling back and forth between the plateau and the Tang dynasty's southwest. A plague of unprecedented proportions was currently breaking out on the plateau. Hundreds of thousands, even millions of cattle and sheep were falling to the ground in large swaths. Although cattle and sheep were the staple food of the Uzan people, once they were infected with the plague, they could no longer be used as food. And if they ate infected cattle or sheep, even humans would die of the disease, and there was no way to treat them. Daluan Ruozan had only sent several 100,000 soldiers to besiege the plateau, forcing Wang Chong and the Tang people into a state of thirst. But Wang Chong had plunged most of the steppe into a famine. The plague was currently spreading from the Ngari royal lineage to the entire plateau. Its effects were so great that even the Tsenpo had been alarmed. Right now, the Tsenpo had mobilized a large number of soldiers to intercept the Ngari royal lineage and kill all the wandering cattle and sheep. Even the great general who was locked in battle with Geshu Han had been pulled out of the army. From this, one could easily imagine the severity of this matter. But even so, there was no guarantee that no fish would escape the net. The more Daluan Ruozan looked at the documents on the table, the more alarmed he became. If not for the fact that the war for the Southwest had reached a critical juncture and it was hard to get off a tiger if you rode it, he would have long since led the army back. This son of the Wang clan. Daluan Ruozan clenched his fists, the veins on his forehead bulging. As the wise minister of the Ngari royal lineage, Daluan Ruozan had always held a feather fan in his hand. He had always given the impression of a cultured and refined man who rarely got angry. But this matter had completely surpassed the limits of what Daluan Ruozan could accept. Wantonly spreading a plague across the steppe, poisoning and killing tens of thousands of cattle and sheep, turning the entire steppe into a land of plague. If one did not know about this matter, they would find it very difficult to imagine that a youth not even 17 years of age could do such a thing. Daluan Ruozan had always believed that Wang Chong had some talent but lacked experience in the art of war. Only now did he realize that this youth on the mountain possessed a heart even colder and more frightening than he had imagined. "Have you found those some elite cavalry?" Daluan Ruozan asked. Replying to Prime Minister, "They come and go without a trace, and they are extremely strong. The tribal herdsmen of the plateau are simply incapable of stopping them. Moreover, their weapons are also very sharp. When our weapons touch them, they easily break." A messenger had been kneeling at the entrance to the tent for some time. "Sharp?" Daluan Ruozan closed his eyes, vaguely recalling something. "By the way, Prime Minister, the experts of the Great Snow Mountain Temple are already tracking them." The messenger raised his head and said as he recalled something. "Got it." Daluan Ruozan raised his head and looked at the top of the tent, but his expression did not change in the slightest. After such a long time, the cavalry still had not been dealt with. Obviously, they had found a way to get rid of the people of the Great Snow Mountain Temple. Moreover, this terrible disaster had already spread across the plateau. What awaited Uzan would be a disaster that would last for years, decades, or even decades. Right now, the plateau was already a hell. The damage had already been done, and it was already too late to say anything. "Pass down my order, block the news. Before the war ends, don't let anyone know about what happened on the plateau." Daluan Ruozan closed his eyes and said, his clothes trembling. In his decades as a prime minister, this was the first time he had been forced to this point. "Yes, Prime Minister," the messenger replied. The messenger in the tent responded. When he got up, his body paused for a moment, but he quickly stood up. "Speak. What did you find?" Daluan Ruozan asked without raising his head. "Prime Minister, if that kid on the summit, he can speak our language of Uzan." The messenger gathered his courage and looked at the great minister in the tent, his eyes full of worry. That son of the Wang clan was the instigator of all this. This was the best time for him to spread the news. "Impossible." Daluan Ruozan denied without hesitation. He raised his head and closed his eyes, making it impossible to discern the slightest emotion on his face. Even though he's the one who spread the plague, if he's a smart person, he won't say anything. No one will believe him either. Many people knew that the logistics of the Uzan army had encountered a problem. But no one could have guessed that this was related to the unprecedented plague on the plateau. Chapter 6:14. You can leave. Let me have some peace and quiet. Daluan Ruozan said. The tent was empty, but a young figure had clearly appeared before Daluan Ruozan's eyes. At this moment, he was keenly aware that on the other side of the mountain, there was someone just like him, their brows tightly shut, suffering from the same vexation, unable to sleep. In these few decades, Zhangqiu Jianqiong had been no match for him, and neither had Xianyu Zhongtong. Daluan Ruozan had never imagined that just when he had the absolute advantage in numbers, he would encounter the most valiant foe he had ever encountered. In this battle, it was already foreordained that there would be no victor. It was just a matter of who would lose more miserably. Hushu, we won't lose. Absolutely not, right? Daluan Ruozan didn't even raise his head as he spoke to Hushu Huizong, who had appeared behind him at some point, a rare hint of exhaustion in his voice. Relax, we won't lose. Absolutely not. I will always believe in you. Hidden in the shadows, Hushu Huizong pressed a broad and powerful palm against Daluan Ruozan's shoulder. The southwest of the empire finally welcomed a rare moment of peace under the assault of Wang Chong and Daluan Ruozan. But for the Tang dynasty and the surrounding powers, this was destined to be an uneasy moment of peace. The tigers devouring the dragon and overthrowing the Tang dynasty had begun with Mengshi Zhao and Uzan in the southwest. That was the beginning of everything, and it was also destined to be the end. Victory or defeat in that place would determine the outcome of the entire war. The Goguryeo Empire, the Eastern and Western Turkic Khaganates, the Abbasid Caliphate, Karak Spazinu, countless eyes were watching that place. Every day, countless pigeons flew out of the southwest. Sir, Uzan's army seems to have been reduced by a lot. In Longxi of the Tang dynasty, traces of the flames of war could be seen everywhere. Desolation and scars could be seen everywhere. On top of a dilapidated Big Dipper city, a high-ranking captain of the Big Dipper army gazed at the tall plateau across from him and suddenly cried out. Longxi had been embroiled in a bitter battle for a long time. Since the start of the battle, this was the first time Uzan's side had such a sign. At the top of Big Dipper city, Geshu Han stood motionlessly on the city walls. He had fair skin and a handsome face. Even though he was already past his 30s, he still possessed an astonishing temperament and charm. However, Geshu Han's ability to suppress the western border and become the Big Dipper Great General of the Great Tang had never been due to his appearance, but his formidable strength and superb grasp of the art of war. Geshu Han exuded an extremely sharp aura. Just by standing on the walls, he was like an unsheathed saber, standing guard over the city walls and blocking wave after wave of attacks from the Uzan. But not even Geshu Han could understand this change in the Uzan. Huitadra Konglo was the king of generals of the Uzan, his status above that of Hushu Huizong and Dusong Mengpoch. Logically speaking, this sort of mistake should not have occurred. There's a problem on the plateau. As Geshu Han was furrowing his brow in thought, a heavy, mellow, and dignified voice came from behind him. Behind the city gate tower, a middle-aged man dressed in court attire and wearing a jade python belt, with a square face and an honest look on his face, appeared to be extremely wise and far-sighted. Although his appearance was gentle and his facial features were not particularly handsome, this middle-aged man exuded an aura as boundless as the sea. Geshu Han was the Big Dipper Great General, presiding over the western border and possessing peerless strength, but he was still a head lower than this middle-aged man. Teacher. Geshu Han's expression flickered, and he excitedly bowed in respect. Geshu Han's status as the Big Dipper Great General meant that only the Crown Prince's junior guardian, the former commander of the Big Dipper army, the war god of the Tang dynasty, Wang Zhongxi, could make him lower his head and call his teacher. In the Tang dynasty, everyone knew that Geshu Han had once been Wang Zhongxi's subordinate and had been promoted by Wang Zhongxi. It was precisely because of Wang Zhongxi that he had reached his current level. But very few people knew that the relationship between Geshu Han and Wang Zhongxi was far from that of an ordinary subordinate and commanding officer. In truth, Geshu Han had been raised single-handedly by Wang Zhongxi. Rather than saying that Geshu Han was Wang Zhongxi's subordinate, it would be better to say that Geshu Han was Wang Zhongxi's student. In private, in Longxi, Geshu Han had never addressed Wang Zhongxi as lord, but as teacher. He had long ago learned that the crown prince's junior guardian Wang Zhongxi had left the capital. But Geshu Han had not expected Wang Zhongxi to arrive so quickly. In the face of a major war, Huitadra Konglo will not easily mobilize his troops. Unless something unexpected happens on the plateau. A gentle breeze blew as Wang Zhongxi stood on top of the city gate tower. He gazed at the fluttering war flag in the distance, as well as the white warhorse beneath it. In terms of understanding of Uzun and Huitadra Konglo, no one understood it better than Wang Zhongxi. The two of them had always been formidable foes. Alas, Huitadra Konglo had still lost to Wang Zhongxi by a single move. High primordial transformation. Geshu Han slightly creased his brow. Because of the unique geography of the plateau, Uzun could be considered the most comfortable country outside of the Tang dynasty. Other than the Tang dynasty, which had fought its way to the plateau several times in its wars with Uzun, no other faction had been able to invade the plateau. The plateau's unique geography and altitude made it difficult to breathe, and outsiders simply could not stay there for too long. With such a comfortable geography, what problems could the Uzun Empire have? Have you investigated the southwest? Wang Zhongxi suddenly asked, a profound look on his face. The southwest? Upon hearing these two words, Geshu Han froze, a trace of astonishment flashing across his handsome face. In the southwest of the Tang dynasty, the 180,000 soldiers of the Annam Protectorate had been defeated, and Li Jingyi's tens of thousands of reinforcements had been ambushed and defeated by Hushu Wuzong. Geshu Han had long ago received this news. The southwest was currently in a state of complete collapse. Could there still be a chance for the southwest to turn? I heard that a lion city has appeared in the southwest, Wang Zhongxi slowly said as he looked into the distance. Oh. Geshu Han slightly creased his brow as he glanced at Wang Zhongxi and then at the southwest, a pensive look on his face. Good news, Huangfu's Weibo has been opened. If you want to know how I'm doing, you're welcome to follow me. Carrot, how can a puny Annam Protectorate without Zhangqiu Jianqiong standing guard be so firm? In a massive tent on the vast steppe, a bearded and bare-chested Turkic man impatiently remarked as he ate a fragrant roast leg of lamb. Great Khan, Daluan Ruozan and Hushu Wuzong have met their match this time. More than 300,000 Uzun cavalry and several 100,000 Mengshi Zhao soldiers have been trapped on a small mountain, unable to break through. The Western Turkic prince of the left virtuous said. His aura was vast and boundless, as vast as the mountains and seas. Oh. Is the Annam Protectorate that formidable? Didn't they say that they only have less than 100,000 soldiers? Could it be that Xianyu Zhongtong has such talent? No, Great Khan. I hear that it's a child called Wang Chong who's particularly skilled in the art of war. Before Mengshi Zhao and the Tang dynasty even began fighting, he built the Lion City on the Urai Plains, and he's currently in command of the Annam Protectorate. Oh. Osmish Kagan put down the leg of lamb in his hand, a grave look finally appearing in his eyes. Great Khan, the Tang dynasty is still our enemy. Should we help them now? The prince of the left virtuous probed. The tent was deathly still, the only sound being emitted by the flickering of the fire. The Western Turkic Khaganate was currently doing its utmost to attract the armies of the Tang dynasty's Biting Protectorate and Qixi Protectorate. If they wanted to help Mengshi Zhao and Uzun, it was very quiet in the tent. No one spoke. We'll do as you say. After a long while, Osmish Kagan finally nodded. In addition, investigate that Wang Chong. I want to know everything there is to know about him. The Eastern Turkic Khaganate, Goguryeo, the Abbasid Caliphate, Karak Spazinu, the Tang dynasty's prolonged war in the southwest had attracted everyone's attention. No one had expected that, without Zhangqiu Jianqiong, the Annam Protectorate would be able to hold out for so long against the frenzied assaults of Jelifeng and Daluan Ruozan. Each empire was taking their own actions to help Mengshi Zhao and Uzun. Some empires had begun to send soldiers to instigate small-scale battles, while others had begun to think of ways to directly assist Uzun and Mengshi Zhao. The night wind blew. It was already the second day after the armistice. Wang Chong sat cross-legged by himself beneath the banner fluttering high in the sky. His brow was creased, and there was a hint of worry in his expression. Wang Chong rarely revealed his true thoughts in front of his subordinates. Only when he was alone would he reveal his true thoughts. In the darkness, Wang Chong's gaze slowly swept over the surface of the mountain, over the dense ranks of soldiers at the foot of the mountain. An almost imperceptible hint of worry appeared in his eyes. This was an army with strict discipline. This was also an army that had experienced many trials. There was no better army in the southwest, because this was also the last army in the southwest. But at this moment, Wang Chong sensed a rare hint of exhaustion from this army. Daluan Ruozhen's surprise attack had been effective. The problem of water was currently plaguing Wang Chong and the Annam Protectorate. A person could go 3 days without eating. But a person could not go 3 days without drinking water. The army's water supply had pretty much been used up yesterday. After today, there would not be a drop of water left on the mountain. Even the blood of the horses had been used up. Because of the extreme lack of water, the entire Annam Protectorate was in a state of parched mouths and easily fatigued. Although the war had ended 2 days ago, the army was even more fatigued than before. Chapter 6:15. Reporting. Suddenly, an order interrupted Wang Chong's train of thought. Young master, the army has sent word that another 17 soldiers have fainted while on sentry duty. This is already the 12th wave today. The brothers in the army have already sent them to the doctors for treatment. The officer reporting the order respectfully kneeled at the base of the hill, facing the tall banner. Wang Chong's heart sank, but he quickly regained his composure. I understand. In the future, you can deal with these matters on your own. There's no need to report them to me. Yes, young master. The messenger retreated respectfully. Chonger, this is how war is. Where there is victory, there is defeat. Where there is war, there is death. This is unavoidable. The current state is already rather good. The benevolent do not control wealth, the compassionate do not command soldiers. As a commander, you shouldn't be grieving over the deaths of your subordinates. Instead, you should be thinking about how to lead the army to victory, how to avoid even greater casualties. This is the true path of a general. A long sigh, accompanied by heavy footsteps, came from behind. At some point, Wang Yan, dressed in martial attire, had walked up from behind with a grave expression. Father, I know. But it's still unavoidable. Wang Chong replied. In this battle, whether it was his father, Xianyu Zhongtong, or the entire army of the southwest, everyone could only see Daluan Ruozhen and Jelifang. To them, this was a battle that could not be any more normal. But to Wang Chong, this was not the only thing he saw. A dike of 1,000 li can collapse because of an ant hole. The fate of the massive empire that was the Tang dynasty depended on this battle. The Tang dynasty could not afford to lose this war of the southwest, nor could it afford to lose. Because this war involved the future of the entire Tang dynasty. Young master has a benevolent heart. It is all thanks to young master that we were able to reach this step. Right now, the casualties of the Mengshi, Yusang army are even greater than ours. As for what will happen in the future, Xianyu doesn't really care. Another voice came from the dark night. Xianyu Zhongtong walked unhurriedly from another direction and finally sat down on the left side of Wang Chong. Young master, are you looking for us? Chonger, if you have something to say, just say it. Wang Yan also walked over. As the commander-in-chief of the army, the two of them could not easily leave the camp. However, if it was Wang Chong's intention, everything would be different. In fact, the two of them had been here for a while. Seeing that Wang Chong was sitting there in deep thought, neither of them disturbed him. You really have grown up. Wang Yan glanced at the flagpole and saw Wang Chong, who had clearly lost a lot of weight. He sighed in his heart, feeling very gratified. From that unfilial son who had caused him so much worry to now, for the sake of the Tang dynasty, for the people of the Central Plains, for the people of the Southwest, he had traveled a great distance to reinforce them, even putting himself in danger. Wang Chong had changed significantly. Even now, Wang Yan still didn't really understand how Wang Chong had suddenly become so skilled in the art of war. But at this moment, none of this was important. Wang Yan's heart was filled with the pride of a father. Father, Lord Xianyu, we don't have much time. In a few days at the latest, Uzun and Mengshi Zhao will begin their operation. This time, Uzun will not leave any leeway. This might be the final decisive battle between us and Uzun and Mengshi Zhao. Without any pleasantries, Wang Chong looked at the strongest pillar of the Tang dynasty in the southwest and got straight to the point. With these words, the mood around the banner instantly became extremely grave. Wang Yan and Xianyu Zhongtong also had grave expressions on their faces when this matter concerned the safety of 60,000 soldiers and countless civilians in the southwest. Young master, if you have anything to say, please speak. If Xianyu needs my cooperation, I will definitely do my best to cooperate. Xianyu Zhongtong solemnly said. In the defeat of the Southwest, he was the greatest criminal and had to bear the greatest responsibility. From a certain perspective, everything Wang Chong was doing was helping him. At the side, Wang Yan also nodded. Whoosh! Wang Chong waved a hand in front of him, gathering dust and dirt from all around him. When he moved his hand away, a miniature model immediately appeared at the base of the banner. As the actual commander of the Tang army, the situation on the battlefield was now deeply engraved in his mind. In the current situation, we've already returned to the same starting line as Uzun and Mengshi Zhao. We're currently facing a lack of water, and Daluan Ruozhen isn't doing any better than us. And in terms of soldiers, although we've lost 40% of our soldiers, only 60,000 some, Uzun only has 300,000 soldiers left. Their advantage is getting weaker and weaker. The crux of everything is no longer the strength of the Mengshi, Yusang army. As Wang Chong spoke, he slowly swept his gaze over the two Tang dynasty commanders at his side. Good news, Huangfu's Weibo has been opened. If you want to know how I'm doing, you're welcome to follow me. Carrot, young master means, Xianyu Zhongtong slightly creased his brow, a hint of confusion in his eyes. Wang Chong's strategic thinking far surpassed his own. Not even Protector General Zhang Chou would have been able to do any better. Thus, at certain times, unless Wang Chong explicitly said so, it would be very difficult for others to keep up with his leaping thoughts. Wang Chong said nothing more, instead taking out 4 stones and placing them on the miniature model one after another, each one representing the positions of Uzun and Mengshi Zhao armies. Huishu Wuzong, Jelifeng, Duangachuan, and Daluan Ruozhen. Daluan Ruozhen is the civil minister, so our true problem is Uzun and Mengshi Zhao's 3 great generals. As Wang Chong spoke, he placed down the stone representing Daluan Ruozhen and then brought it back up. Daluan Ruozhen knew martial arts, but just like Wang Chong, his greater threat lay in his intelligence and strategy, not his martial arts. The greatest threat to the Tang dynasty was still Huishu Wuzong, Jelifeng, and Duangachuan, these 3 supreme experts. Young Master Wang, I understand what you mean. Xianyu Zhongtong frowned. In the current situation, Huishu Wuzong has General Wang Yan's mighty miracle god, and I can use the Vajra god to deal with Duangachuan. As for Jelifeng, as the ruler of the Mengshi Zhao Empire, he won't easily enter the fray. Thus, we won't have too many problems for the time being. Just because he won't enter the fray doesn't mean that he won't. Wang Chong said. Xianyu Zhongtong was instantly speechless. Wang Chong was right. Jelifeng didn't enter the fray because the situation wasn't serious enough for him to enter the fray. Once he did enter the fray, the Annam Protectorate wouldn't be able to withstand him at all. If the Tang dynasty hadn't developed a set of unparalleled and effective formation techniques from Taizong's era to the current Holy Emperor's era, such as the Mighty Miracle God formation and the Vajra God formation, they could rely on their advantage in numbers to defeat the strong and counteract a single powerful individual. If we don't solve this problem, we'll always be on the defensive, waiting for Daluan Ruozan to attack. And we'll never be able to get out of this predicament. Wang Chong said in a low voice. Hearing Wang Chong's words, Wang Yan and Xianyu Zhongtong's eyes lit up. The Annam Protectorate's top-notch fighting force couldn't compare to Uzan and Mengshi Zhao. This point was clear and without a doubt. Thus, from the start, their strategy was to stall for time and wait for the imperial court's reinforcements. But from Wang Chong's words, it was clearly not the case. Young master, you mean? Is there any other way? Xianyu Zhongtong was skeptical as he probed. He had no doubt that Wang Chong was very skilled in the art of war. But if Wang Chong could even intervene in a battle between top-notch fighting forces, Wang Chong really didn't dare to believe it. Wang Yan didn't say anything, but his eyes were also filled with doubt. Father, you fought with Hushu Wuzong. What do you think of him? Wang Chong didn't say it directly but asked a question instead. Hushu Wuzong is very powerful. His golden Buddha avatar is very powerful and has a strong defense. I gathered 50 to 60 top-notch generals and used the Mighty Miracle God avatar, but I still couldn't suppress him. Wang Yan said thoughtfully. Although the Tang dynasty had a lot of people, it was still just one country. It couldn't possibly fight against all the foreign countries in the world at the same time. This was like fighting against the world alone. Thus, formations like the Mighty Miracle God and the Vajra God to gather the power of the army to fight against the top-notch fighting force of the other side became very necessary. In fact, this was the result of countless experts of the Tang dynasty thinking and researching together. Wang Yan was also bestowed with the Mighty Miracle God because he was born in a family of generals and ministers and was the son of Duke Jiu of the Tang dynasty. Father, if you fight with Hushu Wuzong again, aim at his organs or Jingfu acupoint. In the darkness, Wang Chong's eyes glistened as he suddenly spoke. Oh. Wang Yan stared at Wang Chong in surprise. Chonger, where did you hear this from? Hushu Wuzong was an Uzan great general, and this was the first time even Wang Yan had seen the Vairocana golden body mantra. Even an old general like Wang Yan didn't know about the weaknesses in the armpit or Jingfu acupoints. This was only the first time Wang Chong had come to the southwest, so Wang Yan had no idea how he knew. Father knows that when your child was messing around outside, I learned a little of the Uzan language, so I became very close to some of the Uzan people in the capital. Your child also accidentally heard that the martial arts in the Great Snow Mountain Temple are mostly in the armpit or Jingfu acupoint. If father fights with Hushu Wuzong again, there is no harm in giving it a try. Perhaps you will gain an unexpected harvest. Wang Chong sincerely said. Wang Chong naturally did not associate with any of the Uzan people in the capital. If the scions of noble clans were to get too close to these barbarians, they would very easily be ostracized by others. But in order to convince his father, Wang Chong could only say this. There were 8 major schools of martial arts in the Great Snow Mountain Temple, and their weaknesses would naturally not be concentrated in the armpit or Jingfu acupoint. In the battle 2 days ago, although Wang Chong had not fought with Hushu Wuzong, he had already gained a basic understanding of his martial arts. Chapter 6:16. If that's the case, I can give it a try when the time comes. Wang Yan was skeptical, but at this time, there was no better way. This was also a temporary stopgap measure. That's right, Father, I once heard some information about the Mighty Miracle God formation from Senior So Young's son. It might be useful to Father. Wang Chong pretended to suddenly remember something and continued. War God. Wang Yan and Xianyu Zhongtong trembled as they stared in shock at Wang Chong. Young Master Wang, you actually know the War God? Xianyu Zhongtong grabbed Wang Chong's arm, his expression agitated. He knew that Wang Chong was very talented, but he had never imagined that Wang Chong would know the legendary war god of the Tang dynasty. That person was a godlike existence in the current Tang dynasty, and many people even said that he was dead. Yet Wang Chong was saying that he had a relationship with that lofty war god. Chonger, is what you say true? Even Wang Yan had a shocked expression on his face. Wang Yan had left the capital a long time ago, so he had no idea of So Yung-sun's situation. As for Xianyu Zhongtong, he had always lived in the southwest, far from the capital, so he had no way of getting news. In truth, even in the capital, the relationship between Wang Chong and So Yung-sun was only known to an extremely small circle. Your child speaks no lies, Wang Chong said. It was fated that he could not speak of the events of his last life. Wang Chong could only use So Yung-sun's name to explain. So Yung-sun had always remained in his residence, refusing all visitors. Outsiders had no chance of meeting him, not even his father Wang Yan. No wonder young Master Chong is so skilled in the art of war. Xianyu Zhongtong's eyes lit up, as if he had found the reason behind Wang Chong's astonishing talent. Although Wang Chong was young, everything could be explained if he was the heir of the war god. Chonger, just what did Senior Su say? Wang Yan frowned slightly and said. Compared to Wang Chong's shocking identity, he was more concerned about what So Yung-sun had said. Wang Chong pondered for a moment, then quickly explained a set of advanced mental cultivation methods regarding the mighty miracle deity formation. In the future, when that calamity descended, tens of thousands of foreign invaders swarmed in, mountains and rivers shattered, the great earth collapsing. All of the martial arts secret manuals were no longer secrets. Wang Chong, as the Supreme Grand Marshal of the world and the Supreme War Saint, had studied several sets of top-notch battle formations of the Tang dynasty for the sake of war. Although time had been limited and he hadn't been able to study them all, he had still managed to produce some results. As for the mighty miracle deity formation, as the formation that Wang Chong's father was most skilled in, it was the first to produce results. Although it was impossible to greatly increase the power of the mighty miracle deity formation by making a last-minute effort, it was completely possible to increase the formation's power by a small amount and increase its offensive power. As Wang Yan listened to Wang Chong recite the mental cultivation method, he became more and more alarmed. He had been practicing the mighty miracle deity formation for 6 or 7 years now, and he had memorized all the details. But it was precisely for this reason that Wang Yan knew that this mental cultivation method was of an even higher level. Rather than calling it a mental cultivation technique, it was more accurate to call it a technique called Mighty Spirit Strike. It allowed one to gather all the strength in one's body for a short period of time and unleash a powerful strike. This technique would place an enormous burden on the bodies of all the participants in the formation, but it truly could increase the power of the attack. Did old Senior So Yung-sun really tell you this? Wang Yan was inwardly shocked. Each of the supreme formation techniques of the Tang dynasty had a long history and had been refined hundreds of times. For example, the mighty miracle deity formation could be traced back to the era of Emperor Taizong. Wang Yan had never imagined that someone would be able to raise the level of a formation of the Tang dynasty by a level. Protector General, talk with my son for a while. I have some matters to attend to, so I will take my leave. Wang Yan had long ago become impatient after obtaining the mental cultivation method for the mighty miracle deity formation, so he couldn't just sit around. The mighty miracle deity formation would determine the outcome of this battle, so how could Wang Yan possibly wait? Young Master Wang, why have I never heard you mention the old war god before? Once Wang Yan left, Xianyu Zhongtong curiously asked. This could be said to be the most surprising thing he had heard today. With a powerful foe before us, how could Wang Chong be in the mood to mention such things? Wang Chong bitterly smiled. From a certain perspective, it would not be an exaggeration to say that he was So Yung-sun's successor, but So Yung-sun had not taught him the art of war. On the contrary, So Yung-sun had even been defeated by him. If not for the urgency of this matter, Wang Chong wouldn't have even mentioned this. Young master is correct. Xianyu Zhongtong's heart was filled with deep veneration. What does young master think about the upcoming battle? Lord Protector General, what do you think about Meng Shi Zhao's great general Duangechuan? Wang Chong earnestly said. Oh. Xianyu Zhongtong's brow creased, his expression turning grave. He had originally believed that Wang Chong would ask him about the Vajra god formation, but he hadn't expected Wang Chong to ask about Duangechuan. I originally didn't want to say it, but since young master has asked, I'll just say it. In this battle, the one I'm most worried about has never been Hushu Wuzong, but Duangechuan. Xianyu Zhongtong's expression was extremely solemn. This was the first time Wang Chong had seen such an expression on his face. Wang Chong sat upright and still, a look of attentiveness on his face. When a wolf stands in the open, no matter how vicious it is or how many there are, you will always be prepared. But when a poisonous snake hides in the grass, you can't see or hear it, so it's impossible to guard against it. Duangechuan is that poisonous snake. In the darkness, Xianyu Zhongtong's words left Wang Chong flabbergasted. Xianyu Zhongtong had always given the impression of being honest and loyal, so these words left Wang Chong flabbergasted. Wang Chong had never imagined that Xianyu Zhongtong would have such a high evaluation of Duangechuan, nor had he imagined that while Xianyu Zhongtong appeared to be careless, he was actually extremely concerned about everything. Lord Protector General, just what happened in the Battle of Irai? Wang Chong finally asked the question that concerned him the most. If he hadn't experienced an extremely painful and indelible event, Wang Chong was confident that Xianyu Zhongtong would never have said these words. Xianyu Zhongtong's eyes twitched, and a look of reluctance flitted across his face. Duangechuan will never easily strike. He will always keep his eyes on you, watching you, searching for your weakness, and at the most crucial moment, he will strike a fatal blow. A hint of blood appeared in Xianyu Zhongtong's eyes. The Battle of Irai would forever be the greatest defeat of his life, the deepest humiliation, and the most unforgettable nightmare. Even if Wang Chong asked him about it, he would not be willing to think about it. The war banners rustled in the darkness as Wang Chong gazed at the pain, regret, and guilt in the eyes of this protector general who was destined to be condemned by the people of the world and cursed by the people of the world. Wang Chong was deeply moved. Wang Chong's understanding of Xianyu Zhongtong had always come from the words of others and the comments made about him on the streets of the capital. Besides this, Wang Chong knew nothing else. For the first time, Wang Chong understood the inner world of this sinner of the Tang dynasty. I understand. Under the banner, Wang Chong gave a serious nod. I will have to trouble Lord Protector General with regards to Duangechuan. There is also another matter that Wang Chong would like to discuss with Lord Protector General. Oh. Xianyu Zhongtong was moved, a hint of surprise finally appearing on his face. No one knew what Wang Chong and Xianyu Zhongtong discussed, only that Xianyu Zhongtong left very late. Young master, be at ease. If that situation really does occur, Xianyu will pay any price to keep him here. Xianyu Zhongtong's expression was extremely solemn. Then I will have to trouble Lord Protector General. Wang Chong sent him off. After Xianyu Zhongtong left, the summit fell silent once more. Wang Chong stood alone at the base of the banner, his mind in turmoil. At this stage of the battle, what he could do was extremely limited. Whether it was Hushu Wuzong, Daluan Ruozhen, Wang Chong, or Xianyu Zhongtong, no one knew where this battle would lead, but Wang Chong knew that the outcome of this battle was not far away. I wonder how Daluan Ruozhen is doing. Wang Chong suddenly thought of the other side of the mountain. Although his situation was bad, Wang Chong knew that Daluan Ruozhen's situation was not much better. Daluan Ruozhen truly was in a very bad situation. Reporting. Another 20 soldiers haven't acclimatized and have been sent to the Mengshi Zhao Medical Center. An Uzun messenger got down on one knee, his head lowered. In the tent, there were 7 messengers like him lined up in a row. Prime Minister, the food of Mengshi Zhao isn't suitable for us. The soldiers are all suffering from diarrhea. Prime Minister must think of a way to resolve our food problem. Another Uzun messenger finally couldn't help but say, I understand. All of you are dismissed. Daluan Ruozan waved his hand, his mind in turmoil. We won't be able to last for too long. In the end, we nomads still can't acclimatize to their food. A voice came from behind him. Huishu Wuzong stood behind Daluan Ruozan like a god, a long saber at his waist. Ha! Daluan Ruozan let out a long sigh. Huishu Wuzong was right. How could he not know this? The entire Uzun army was eating the food of Mengshi Zhao. Although the problem of hunger had been temporarily resolved, all the soldiers were suffering from diarrhea. Some soldiers had even fainted from the diarrhea. This was the result of the stomachs of the Uzun people not being used to the food of Mengshi Zhao. And for the Uzun, the final result was that the entire army was rapidly losing the ability to fight. If this situation continued, in 5 to 7 days, the Uzun army would lose the ability to threaten the Annam Protectorate. We have no other choice. This is what we have to do. At this point in the war, it's all about who can last the longest and who will collapse first. Right now, we can't retreat, nor can we retreat. If we don't occupy the southwest, we'll end up with nothing after paying such a high price. Chapter 617. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. Although there was nothing in front of him, Daluan Ruozan could see a pair of eyes staring back at him. This was an invisible contest. Daluan Ruozan would not allow himself to lose no matter what, let alone to a 17-year-old boy. But, are you really confident that we can last longer than them? Huishu Wuzong asked. His tone was as sharp as ever. Daluan Ruozan fell silent. This was a race, and in this race, neither he nor Wang Chong had any sort of advantage. Naturally, neither of them could confidently say that they would be able to last until the end. No matter what, we will not lose. We will not lose. Daluan Ruozan clenched his fist tightly. What a pity. If only I had a little more time. Daluan Ruozan stared at the top of the tent. He did not say this out loud. Whoosh! At this moment, Daluan Ruozan and Huishu Wuzong heard the sound of wings flapping. It seemed that something had been left at the top of the tent. In just a moment, a black carrier pigeon slid down from the top of the tent and entered the tent. Daluan Ruozan and Huishu Wuzong looked at each other and saw the same surprise in each other's eyes. This was not an ordinary carrier pigeon. If he remembered correctly, they had just received a carrier pigeon like this not long ago. It was definitely not normal for a second one to arrive so soon. I'll go take a look. Huishu Wuzong was silent for a moment. He walked past Daluan Ruozan and strode over. Removing the leggings from the leg of the black carrier pigeon, Huishu Wuzong glanced at it. He gradually frowned and his expression became more and more strange. What's wrong? Congratulations. What you've been waiting for has happened. Huishu Wuzong flicked the letter into Daluan Ruozan's hand. Daluan Ruozan was flabbergasted, and when he looked down, his entire face paled. Wonderful. Daluan Ruozan looked at the message in his hand and couldn't help but shout in ecstasy. Time is on our side now. Daluan Ruozan's creased brow instantly relaxed, and the worry on his brow was swept away. The black carrier pigeon only brought one message: Wang Zhongxi's appearance had shaken the entire plateau, and once again, the Uzun Empire felt an unprecedented threat. Even the Tsenpo felt deeply uneasy, unable to eat or sleep. One had to know that Wang Zhongxi was one of the few people who had fought their way to the plateau and had even come close to occupying the Uzun Empire. The Tsenpo's fear of Wang Zhongxi was even greater than the plague spreading across the plateau. In order to deal with Wang Zhongxi, the Tsenpo had even mobilized the Lesa royal lineage, the Ye's royal lineage, and a portion of the royal capital's guards to Longxi to reinforce King of General Huitadra Konglo. After all, the Tsenpo had always stood aloof from the four royal lineages and rarely involved himself in the wars between the empire and other countries. One could easily imagine just how much the Tsenpo feared Wang Zhongxi. And to Daluan Ruozhen, this was an unexpected harvest. There was no question that he had won even more time. Ha ha ha, pass on my order. Postpone the battle for 2 days and choose another day to fight. Daluan Ruozhen's laughter resounded over the tent, and this new order was quickly transmitted to the entire Mengxi, Yusang army. Let's go, Huishu Wuzong. Let's go eat the rice of the Arai. Daluan Ruozhen laughed as he walked out of the tent, his face flushed. The situation isn't good. The Uzun have begun to light fires to cook. On the mountain, several generals of the Annam Protectorate had gathered together. Lin Wushou looked down the mountain, his brow furrowed into a deep frown. Uzun and Mengxi Zhao had sent scouts every day to keep an eye on the mountain, but how could the soldiers of the Annam Protectorate not keep a close watch on them? The number of cooking fires in the Uzun camp had been far less than this in the past few days, but in a short period of time, the number of cooking fires had increased tenfold. The Uzun are eating the food of the Mengxi Zhao. Lin Wushou's expression was grim. It was no secret that the Uzun had run out of food, and they had long since begun to eat the food of the Mengxi Zhao. But the situation this time was completely different. The fact that the number of cooking fires had increased so much meant that the Uzun had completely accepted the food of the Mengxi Zhao. A people who lived on horseback had truly accepted the food of a farming people. If that's the case, it's going to be troublesome. The Uzun can accept the food of the Mengxi Zhao to solve their food problem, but we have no way of solving our water problem. If this continues, we'll lose for sure. Luoji stood at the side, his face fraught with worry. We must inform young master of this matter. Zhao Hong turned to look at the eagle. The eagle, you have the closest relationship with young master, so you should inform young master. No need. A light breeze blew past. The eagle stood on the summit, his expression calm and unmoving. Young master already knows, so there's no need for us to say anything. And young master already has many things to worry about. In the future, there's no need to bother him with these things. 60,000 soldiers, all of the southwest, including the imperial court, had placed all their hopes on Wang Chong. The eagle spent every day at Wang Chong's side. Only he knew how much pressure Wang Chong was under right now. If not for the fact that he was limited by his own abilities, the eagle truly wished that he could replace Wang Chong and share some of the pressure. And in the end, young master was only 17. The eagle's words caused the crowd to fall silent. Luoji, Lin Wushou, and Zhao Hong all turned to look at the mountain. There, they could faintly make out the back of a figure sitting cross-legged, motionless. Water source, water source. Is there really no other way? Wang Chong sat alone, his mind in turmoil. He had long ago noticed what was going on with Daluan Ruozhen and Huishu Wuzong. The problem of food for the Uzun was not so easy to resolve. Acclimatization and differences in food culture were not things that could be resolved by Daluan Ruozhen expressing his stance. But Daluan Ruozhen had undoubtedly used his actions to express his resolve. At the very least, he would be able to persist for a few more days in this situation. But Wang Chong no longer had the time. The Annam Protectorate's water supply had been completely used up, and warhorses could no longer be killed. Otherwise, if the Mengxi, Yusang army attacked, the Tang dynasty would surely lose. The Tang dynasty was besieged on all sides and on the verge of collapse. Water, water, there has to be a way. Wang Chong sat cross-legged on the ground and racked his brains, thinking through everything he knew about water in his past and present lives. But he still found nothing. The mountains. When Wang Chong had chosen this place to set up camp, he had determined that water would be an unsolvable problem. As time slowly passed, Wang Chong sat cross-legged on the ground, his mind blank. In truth, the fact that he had been able to last this long in this war had already surpassed his expectations, but he could not lose no matter what. Walala! Suddenly, he heard the sound of a rock rolling. Careful! Wang Chong raised his head and saw a disturbance in the distance. It seemed like a warhorse of cavalry had accidentally kicked off a large rock, causing it to roll toward a spearman at the base of the mountain. Buzz! As Wang Chang's gaze followed the movement of the rock, an idea suddenly flashed through his mind. That's right. Ha ha ha, how could I have forgotten? Wang Chong excitedly laughed. I've thought of a way. Daluan Ruozhen, you've lost for sure. Bang! The sword swung down heavily, and with a crack, the rock was peeled off, revealing a smooth section. But nothing happened. The group of people looked at Wang Chong, who had given the order, in confusion. Young master, what are we looking for this time? One of the generals asked. An hour ago, Wang Chong had given this strange order, but he had never mentioned the reason. Don't think too much, just do as I say. Wang Chong flicked his sleeves and turned to leave. Bang! A second, a third, a fourth. Wang Chong brought his men and dug around the mountain. No one knew what Wang Chong was trying to do, even the eagle was confused. Only Wang Chong knew what he was looking for. He was looking for a water source. All mountains had a certain water storage and interception capacity. This was a shallow water on the surface. If it flowed out through the cracks in the rocks, it would be a drinkable water source. Although it was not much, to the current Annam Protectorate, it was extremely precious. A little water source was enough to change the current situation of the Annam Protectorate, greatly boosting their morale. Wang Chong and Daluan Ruozhen were both in an extremely bad situation. Although Daluan Ruozhen had found a way to replace it with Meng Shizhao's food, this was not a permanent solution. It was only a temporary measure and would not last for long. Wang Chong knew that this was an invisible race. Whoever could not hold on first would be the first to fall. Again. Wang Chong flicked his sleeves and turned to leave. Once, twice, thrice. Although he failed again and again, and did not manage to dig out the shallow water that Wang Chong wanted, Wang Chong was not discouraged. There would definitely be shallow water on the surface of any mountain. It was just a matter of how much there was. Moreover, the water would gather and flow in different directions under the surface of the mountain. In Wang Chong's memory, even a place like the western region had Keres wells, formed by shallow water. There was no reason that a place like the southwest did not have such a tall mountain range. More importantly, not long ago, there had been such a heavy rainstorm that it was hard to tell friend from foe. In such a short period of time, there was no reason that no water could be intercepted on this mountain range. Even if the mountain could not intercept the water, there was no reason for it to flow so fast. No matter what, there must be water here. Chapter 618. Bam! Another loud sound rang out. God knew how many times he had tried to dig here and there on the mountain. When he was about to dig all over the mountain, he finally swung the long sword down, and a stream of clear mountain spring water gushed out from the cracks in the stone. The shining white water danced in the air, sprinkling around the crowd. In that instant, everyone was stunned. Even the messenger who was wielding the Wuzi steel sword was still holding his sword high. He was drenched all over, and stood there in a daze, stunned. Water! It's water! It's actually water! Young master actually dug out water on the mountain. Luoji, Lin Wushou, Zhao Hong, the eagle, and everyone else were stunned. The surrounding soldiers couldn't help but exclaim in excitement. Everyone knew that young master had given a strange order to dig around the mountain. But no one had ever thought that it had something to do with water. Even the eagle hadn't expected it to be like this. Digging out a water source on a dry, rocky mountain without much vegetation was like a miracle to everyone. Boom! In an instant, the surrounding soldiers all rushed forward, scooping up the spring water gushing out from the cracks in the rocks, and gulping it down madly. As they drank, they trembled in excitement. The Tang dynasty's water source had been completely depleted a few days ago. And before the water was depleted, everyone had to go through a long period of water restriction. Everyone's daily water consumption was calculated by drops. And the water in the rice was extremely little. As early as a few days ago, the rice cooked by the stove was already half cooked. The reason was simple: there wasn't enough water. Under such circumstances, everyone was already dizzy from hunger, and their mouths were dry. More importantly, because of the lack of water, everyone was severely fatigued and tired easily. No one could imagine the feeling of someone who had been thirsty for a long time suddenly coming into contact with a pool of clear water. That kind of feeling was driving them crazy. "What are you waiting for? There's so many soldiers, is one look enough?" Wang Chong stood on the mountain and said. "Yes, young master." The messenger was startled, as if he had just woken up from a dream. He hurriedly followed Wang Chong with a joyful expression on his face. For an army of 60,000, a clear spring was obviously not enough. He waved his sword again and again, not knowing that he was doing such an important thing. If he had known, he would have been more diligent than anyone else. "Young master, tell me, I'll do it." 1 mouthful, 2 mouthfuls, 3 mouthfuls. Rocks were split open one after another. Between the cracks of the rocks, a shallow layer of cold water continuously flowed out. As the clear spring water flowed out, rumbling sounds could be heard as the entire army boiled over. Warhorses, soldiers, all the soldiers were drinking to their heart's content. After such a long time, this was the happiest and most exciting day for everyone. Even the mountains were lit up with cooking fires in advance to celebrate. The warhorse neighed and neighed, overflowing with joy and excitement. "Chonger, how long can these springs last for?" At the summit of the mountain, Wang Yan, Xianyu Zhongtong, and Wang Chong stood side by side with their banners fluttering in the wind. At the base of the mountain, the soldiers and their horses were all drinking, many of them using their armor and water skins to receive the spring water. Many of them were so excited that their faces were red. This could be said to be the best sight that Wang Yan and Xianyu Zhongtong had seen in a long time. "I also don't know." A faint smile appeared on Wang Chong's lips, but his words left Wang Yan and Xianyu Zhongtong greatly surprised. Just how much shallow water was on this mountain and how long the water could last was something that no one could estimate. In this regard, Wang Chong said nothing. "But it definitely won't last too long," Wang Chong said. There was a limit to the shallow layer of water. Although there was no way to estimate it, one could basically determine that it wouldn't last too long. Then why is young master allowing everyone to drink, cook, and water the horses so wantonly? Xianyu Zhongtong turned his head, his complexion slightly changing. A general's duty was on the battlefield, how to arrange troops and defeat the enemy. Logistics and command, digging up water in the mountains, geography and geology, forging steel city walls, these weren't Xianyu Zhongtong's strong points at all. Xianyu Zhongtong had originally believed that Wang Chong dared to allow the army to enjoy the water because there was enough to drink. He had never imagined that Wang Chong's answer would be this. Everyone on the mountain was drinking, and the horses were also swollen. The water that had not been collected was spilled all over the mountain. This was already a waste. "Young master, the problem of water is related to the army. It's not too late to control it now," Xianyu Zhongtong said seriously, his expression incomparably stern. Wang Yan said nothing, but his brow slowly creased. It was clear that he was inclined to agree with Xianyu Zhongtong. If the spring was limited, then controlling the water supply was necessary. This was something that a general had to understand. "No. There's no need to control it." Wang Chong shook his head and smiled, his expression calm and relaxed. He gave off the feeling that everything was within his grasp and that nothing was out of his control. "Father, Lord Xianyu, in the current situation, not only should we not control it, we should let loose and let them enjoy the water without restraint and waste it." Wang Yan and Xianyu Zhongtong were both dumbfounded. As the highest-ranking commanders of the Southwest, the two had experienced countless battles and possessed rich experience, but Wang Chong's answer had left them bewildered. Why is that? Wang Yan frowned. The two of them stared at Wang Chong. In the current situation, wasting water was not a wise decision, but the two were confident that Wang Chong had a good explanation. Father, Lord Xianyu, with how the war in the southwest has developed, do you think that it is better to end it quickly or to drag it out? Wang Chong said. The two commanders of the southwest fell silent. In the past, the two of them would have definitely answered that the longer they dragged it out, the better. This way, they would have enough time to wait for the imperial court to send reinforcements. But now, neither Wang Yan nor Xianyu Zhongtong dared to say this. No one knew when the reinforcements would arrive. If the reinforcements did not arrive and there was not enough water, the longer the war dragged on, the more disadvantageous it would be for the army. After all, people could go 3 days without food, but they could not go 3 days without water. As long as Daluan Ruozhen put up with it, he could still surround the Annam Protectorate and completely crush it. And when that happened, the Mengshi, Yusang army would not even need to use a single soldier to wipe out the entire Annam Protectorate. That would actually be the worst plan. Young Master Wang, I understand your meaning. Xianyu Zhongtong suddenly said. Let's do as you say. On the side, Wang Yan solemnly nodded. On the other side, as the men and horses on the mountain were drinking, the white spring water gushing out of the cracks in the rocks, and everyone was heartily laughing, the Mengshi, Yusang army at the base of the mountain was dumbfounded. Several cavalry galloped off, and the news quickly reached Daluan Ruozhen and Jelifeng. Something like this actually happened. When Jelifeng received the news, he almost slammed the table and shot to his feet, rushing out of the tent without a second thought. However, by the time Jelifeng arrived at the scene, 2 tall and sturdy figures were already standing in front of him. This is impossible. As he looked at the splashing water on the mountain and heard the rushing water, Daluan Ruozhen's entire face paled. The massive impact had even caused his body to slightly tremble. How could something like this happen? This can't be possible. Absolutely impossible. Daluan Ruozhen's eyes were as wide as saucers. Let alone Jelifeng, even Huishu Huizong, who had known him for so long, had never seen such an expression on his face. Daluan Ruozhen was known as the civil minister, the wise minister. His most basic impression was that he would remain unfazed even if Mount Tai were to collapse in front of him. Even in his most intense battle with Zhangqiu Jinxiong, Huishu Huizong had never seen such an expression on his face. But the impact of the scene before him was clearly different. Transforming the air into water, digging up water from the mountain, this matter had far surpassed the limits of Fan Bo's imagination. After all, this was a rock. A rock. At this moment, Daluan Ruozhen's entire body was as cold as ice. Before the Battle of Irai had even begun, Wang Chong had seemed to have foreseen it and constructed Lion City on the Irai plains. This was something that Daluan Ruozhen could accept. In the north, he had laid down many layers of traps, allowing Wang Chong to smoothly charge south to the Irai region. This was also something that Daluan Ruozhen could accept. Even the fact that a 17-year-old youth like Wang Chong possessed such terrifying military tactics, using only 100,000 soldiers to stop the 500,000 Mengshi, Yusang coalition army, was something that Daluan Ruozhen could accept. But Daluan Ruozhen could not accept that Wang Chong had actually dug up a clear spring on a barren, treeless mountain. Ever since he was a child, Daluan Ruozhen had been well versed in literature, astronomy, geography, divination, and all the books of the Central Plains. He had read all of them, and he was extremely familiar with them, but he had never seen any of them mention how one could dig up water from a mountain. If he had not seen with his own eyes, how that shining white water flowed from the mountain all the way to the foot of the mountain, completely wasted, Daluan Ruozhen would never have believed that such a thing was possible. Prime Minister, what should we do now? Jelifeng and Daluan Ruozhen stood side by side as they spoke. He had been fully aware of Daluan Ruozhen's plan, but everything had changed. Wang Chong had actually produced clear water out of thin air, instantly resolving the problem of the Annam Protectorate's water supply. Thus, the premise of the Mengshi-Yusang coalition's plan no longer existed. If this continued, the diarrhea of the Uzun soldiers would only worsen, and their fighting strength would plummet. On the other hand, the Annam Protectorate would slowly recover its strength. The scales were subconsciously tipping in favor of the Annam Protectorate. There's no other choice. Advance. Forward. Open. Fight. Daluan Ruozen's complexion was incomparably nasty, and he had to enunciate each of his last words through clenched teeth. He had never imagined that in this battle, when he had the advantage in numbers, he would be forced into such desperate straits. Prime Minister, perhaps the situation isn't as serious as we think. The Tang dynasty has 60,000 soldiers, so how long can the clear water on the mountain last? Chapter 619. Your Majesty, I understand what you mean. There will come a day when the mountain spring runs out, but how long will it last? 10 days? A month? Or even longer? What if it happens to be 10 days, or perhaps a month? Daluan Ruozen calmly said, but the trembling in his voice was so obvious that even the messenger next to him could sense it. Jelifeng fell silent. What a frightening young man. Raising her head and gazing at the gurgling water flowing down the mountain, Jelifeng suddenly understood. This was a sort of show-off, but it was also a silent pressure. And it had to be said that Wang Chong had truly succeeded. He could take the risk, but Uzun and Meng Shizhao could not afford to wait. Prime Minister is correct. We can't afford to wait. Duan Gechuan's voice came from the side, setting the tone for this matter. Boom! That the yak horn resounded through the sky. After 3 days, thick smoke once more erupted from the base of the mountain. The armies of Meng Shizhao and Uzun once more began to move. The dark clouds of war clamored over the earth. This was another battle between the Tang dynasty and Mengshi-Yusang, and it was also foreordained to be the last. This time, neither side could retreat. This was destined to be a battle to the death, a battle that would be fought to the last soldier, to the last drop of blood, a decisive battle. Bong bong bong. High up on the mountain, a deafening sound of war drums suddenly rang out, followed by 2, 3, 4. The dense sounds of the war drums gradually spread over the entire mountain like raindrops, reaching hundreds of miles away. The dark clouds of war once more rose into the sky. The remaining 60,000 soldiers of the Tang dynasty in the southwest once more began to work like a massive war machine. At this stage in the War of the Southwest, both the Annam Protectorate and the armies of Meng Shizhao and Uzun were showing deep exhaustion. The strength of both sides was far from what it had been at the start. The Tang dynasty had a period of experience when the water source burst. Uzun, on the other hand, was plagued by a lack of food and diarrhea. But even so, the tension between the two sides was much stronger than the first day. Whether it was Uzun, Meng Shizhao, or the Tang dynasty, both sides deeply understood that this confrontation between the three countries in the southwest was about to reach its end. There would be no more probing and decisive battles. This would be the most important battle between the three sides. Back. 1. Fight. Wang Gongzi, before the battle begins, may I ask you a question? In front of the Mengshi-Yusang army, 2 ornate golden carriages stood side by side. In one carriage stood Daluan Ruozen and Huishu Wuzong, while in the other carriage stood Jelifeng and Duan Gechuan. Daluan Ruozen and Huishu Wuzong were slightly in front, while Jelifeng and Duan Gechuan were slightly behind. Compared to at the start, Daluan Ruozen had lowered his feather fan. He was no longer as relaxed as he had been on the first day. Instead, he seemed a little more sincere and calm. At this stage of the battle, both sides had used all their methods and abilities. Daluan Ruozen had nothing to say. Wang Chong was a qualified opponent. Moreover, it was a formidable opponent who could stand on equal footing with him and was not inferior in the slightest. In his heart, Daluan Ruozan had already disregarded his age, treating him as an existence on the same level as himself. Prime Minister, please speak. On top of the mountain, Wang Chong stood calmly in front of the flagpole. On his left and right were his father Wang Yan, Xianyu Zhongtong, and other generals of the Tang dynasty. In the final battle, all the commanders and upper echelon generals of the Tang dynasty stood together, facing off against the Mengshi, Yusang commanders across the void. At this stage of the battle, everyone had a kind of awareness in their hearts. A conversation like this would be the last one between them. At the age of 17, I don't have the same level of attainment in the art of war as young master. All kinds of decisiveness, breadth of mind, boldness, foresight, are not things that a person of this age should have. Daluan Ruozan believed that he was familiar with the classics, all the classics of the Central Plains. There was not one that he did not know, there was not one that he did not know, there was not one that he did not know. In this aspect, very few people could match him. But young master's art of war, Daluan Ruozan has never seen it. Before the decisive battle, young master, can you not be stingy and tell me where you learned these military strategies from? Daluan Ruozan looked up at the mountain, his voice resounding. Wang Chong's appearance had been like a comet streaking across the sky, changing the entire situation of the southwest, dragging out a battle that should have been certain victory for Uzan and Mengshi Zhao into this state. And the art of war he had used was even more enigmatic. The insight he had displayed in the art of war were simply unparalleled, making him even more enigmatic. Just what sort of person could raise such a disciple? Just where did this art of war come from? For all these reasons, Wang Chong's origins and the art of war had always been like a dense fog in Daluan Ruozan's mind. And it had lasted from the start of the war to the very end. Daluan Ruozan had not been hoping for an answer, but he had not expected the result to be so unexpected. Let me answer this question for you. A thunderous voice came from the side. It was not Wang Chong, but Xianyu Zhongtong. Daluan Ruozan, you are Uzan's minister and also a veteran general of the Southwest. You should have heard of this name, right? What? Daluan Ruozan's heart sank. Countless gazes followed him to look at Xianyu Zhongtong on the summit. So young son of the Tang dynasty. That person is young Master Wang's true master. Boom. So Young Sun's name was like a thunderclap crashing down on everyone's heads. Daluan Ruozan, Huishu Wuzong, and Jelifeng, the three heavyweights of the southwest, all paled. Even Duan Gechuan paled, his body trembling. This is impossible. Daluan Ruozan's eyes went wide as he looked at the summit in disbelief. This news had far surpassed the attention he had paid to the war in the southwest. So Young Sun was a nightmarish existence on the Uzan Plateau. Daluan Ruozan had even heard of this name when he was still a child. If Wang Zhongxi could be said to be the war god of the Tang dynasty, an existence that everyone on the Uzan Plateau feared, an existence that even the Tsenpo could not eat or sleep in peace from, then So Young Sun was an even more frightening demon king of the Central Plains. The terrifying legends of So Young Sun had been passed down through the generations of Uzan generals. As time passed, their fear of him deepened. He was the source of the deepest nightmarish mark left on the Uzan Plateau. His story could even be traced back to the Tsenpo of several generations ago. This was an existence that made everyone pale at the mention of his name. Just the mention of his name was enough to make one feel uneasy. So Young Sun died decades ago, so where did this disciple come from? Daluan Ruozan instinctively refused to believe that Xianyu Zhongtong was lying. That's right. I spent almost 10 years in the capital of the Tang dynasty, and I heard that the Su residence has long since gone extinct. So Young Sun has no descendants, and the gate hasn't been opened for decades. Even the ministers of the court say that So Young Sun is dead, so where did this So Young Sun come from? A voice came from the side. The one who found this news the most unbelievable was Fenjie. He had been a hostage in the capital since he was a child, so he knew all the secrets of the capital. Now that Wang Chong said that he was war god So Young Sun's successor, how could Fenjie possibly believe him? Ha ha ha, Daluan Ruozan, I've already told you the answer you wanted to know. As for whether you believe it or not, that's up to you. But there's one thing I can tell you. The capital has already confirmed that old Senior Su is still alive. Xian Yu Zhongtong heartily laughed. He had presided over the southwest for a long time, so how could he not know that the Uzan people feared So Young-sun? How could he let go of this chance to strike a blow to the morale of the Uzan people? Moreover, Daluan Ruozan, who else do you think besides So Young-sun old Senior Su could raise a student like young Master Wang, and who else could be worthy of being his master? The base of the mountain was deathly still. Daluan Ruozan, Huishu Wuzong, Jelifeng, and Duan Gechuan were all silent. That's right. Wang Chong was only 17, but his grasp of the art of war was already on par with Daluan Ruozan's, perhaps even superior. No ordinary person could become his master. But So Young-sun just so happened to be one of them. If one said that Wang Chong's master was So Young-sun, then everything could be explained. Young Master Wang comes from a prestigious clan, and Daluan Ruozan admires you. But I have something that I wonder if young master is willing to listen to. Daluan Ruozan took 2 steps forward and continued. Prime Minister, if you have something to say, please say it directly. Wang Chong faintly smiled. At this point in the battle, both sides had used up all their trump cards. No matter what schemes Daluan Ruozan had up his sleeves, they were all useless at this point. Young master is quite talented. Even Daluan Ruozan is far inferior to you in the art of war. What's even rarer is that you're still so young. It's a pity that you're too vicious. I heard that the Tang dynasty ruled the country with benevolence and filial piety, and Confucianism advocated etiquette. Young master, for doing such a thing, aren't you afraid of retribution in the future? At the last sentence, Daluan Ruozan's pupils constricted, and his eyes shone with extreme hatred. When the 2 countries were at war, Wang Chong had actually taken a roundabout route and sent an army to invade the plateau to spread the plague. The current Ngari royal lineage was like hell, with corpses, plagues, and deserted tribes everywhere. An unprecedented war was spreading on the plateau. What was even more terrifying was that the plague was still spreading, and no one knew when it would end. Even Daluan Ruozan was secretly alarmed by Wang Chong's viciousness and ruthlessness, as well as his decisiveness and boldness. And this massive loss made Daluan Ruozan clench his teeth, his hatred seeping into his bones. To have persisted until now before speaking up was already a display of self-restraint. Upon hearing these words, Wang Chong actually smiled. Righteousness does not wield wealth, benevolence does not command troops. This was all Wang Chong said. As long as we can win this war, what does it matter if we suffer the retribution that Prime Minister speaks of? The civil officials did not love wealth, and the generals did not care about death. Daluan Ruozan had still underestimated him. If it was for safety, for comfort, for reputation, he would never have used up all his wealth to travel thousands of li and participate in this war in the southwest where he was doomed to be outnumbered. When he left the capital, he had never thought that he would be able to return alive. What meaning did Daluan Ruozan in speaking to him about righteousness, the Confucian school, and retribution mean to Wang Chong? A general had to uphold the country and serve its people. If one cherished one's reputation, how could one be considered a general? The fierce winds whipped up the banner. Wang Chong stood at the base of the banner, his expression clear and devoid of fear. At this moment, even Daluan Ruozan was taken aback. Chapter 620. I don't know why, but I suddenly feel that you're right. Huishu Wuzong's eyelids twitched as he looked at the peak of the mountain and said, If we can't kill him in this battle, this person will become a great threat to our Uzan. Daluan Ruozan once said that even if he had to spare the entire Annam Protectorate, he must kill Wang Chong. In the beginning, Huishu Wuzong didn't think much of it. But at this moment, his view of Wang Chong was completely different. His attainments in the art of war and intelligence were secondary, but the coldness and mercilessness that he revealed in that instant moved even Huishu Wuzong. If such a person were to grow up and wield the seal, he would become a great threat to the Uzan Empire in the future. He would not be inferior to existences like Wang Zhongxi and So Yong-sun. If such a person were to grow up and wield the seal, he would become a great threat to the Uzan Empire in the future. He would not be inferior to existences like Wang Zhongxi and So Yong-sun. If that's the case, then don't let him leave alive. Daluan Ruozhen said, his eyes glinting coldly. Young Master Wang, there's no point in talking. We'll see on the battlefield. With these words, Daluan Ruozhen waved the feather fan in his hand, causing the carriage to turn around and vanish into the vast sea of soldiers in a cloud of dust. On the other side, Jelifeng and Duan Gechuan stood together. The two looked at the peak of the mountain deeply before following Daluan Ruozhen. Prepare for battle. On the peak, Wang Chong watched as Daluan Ruozhen and Jelifeng disappeared. He waved his sleeves and disappeared from the peak of the mountain. Thump thump. The deafening sound of war drums resounded throughout the battlefield, and the atmosphere suddenly became tense. The people of the Tang dynasty, the people of Uzan, and the people of Mengshi Zhao, all of them had a strong desire to fight in their eyes. This battle was destined to be intense and cruel. It was also destined that many people would fall on the mountain, never to stand up again. It was a battle for survival. No one had a way out. Everyone had to fight for themselves. It's finally begun. In a place where the naked eye couldn't see, in the middle of the vast Mengshi Zhao army, a pair of eyes was hidden in the shadows, secretly watching the mountaintop. Gequan, the rest is up to you. Jelifeng looked at the burly figure beside her, her eyes filled with anticipation. Others can lose, but our Mengshi Zhao can't. Uzan's people have already failed. We can only rely on ourselves now. The plague had completely disrupted Daluan Ruozhen's state of mind, but Jelifeng didn't say it in front of Daluan Ruozhen. Mengshi Zhao no longer had a way out. They had lost so many soldiers and paid such a heavy price. If they still returned in failure, the entire Mengshi Zhao Empire would never be able to recover from this setback. That was a price that no one could bear. At this point in the battle, both Jelifeng and Duan Gechuan had no way out. I have indeed miscalculated this battle. I didn't expect that child of the Wang clan to be so powerful. But Your Majesty, don't worry. I have already grasped that child's weakness and arranged everything. No matter what, that child will not be able to leave here alive. The history of the Annam Protectorate should also come to an end. Duan Gechuan's voice was very soft. If one was a little further away, they wouldn't be able to hear it at all. Gequan, I will now entrust the fate and future of Mengshi Zhao to you. I believe in you. Jelifeng patted Duan Gechuan's shoulder and left. Boom! The yak horns began to blare, and with this assault, the earth rumbled as thousands of Mengshi Zhao and Uzan cavalry surged toward the mountains. This was different from the first time. This time, everyone understood what they were facing and what fate awaited them. There was no way out. Everyone gave it their all. Kaiyil! Kaiyil! It was hard to say who was the first to shout, but the thousands of Mengshi, Yusang soldiers began to roar together, their battle cries seeming to shake the mountains and sunder the earth. Ready! On the mountain, on the outermost perimeter of the Tang dynasty's army, large shields rose up, reflecting a cold and gloomy light. On the summit, the 60,000 soldiers of the Annam Protectorate began to move according to some sort of pattern, a somber aura soaring into the sky. Although the 300,000 soldiers of the Mengshi, Yusang army far outnumbered the Tang dynasty, the 60,000 soldiers of the Annam Protectorate felt like the coldest and most frightening of machines. This machine had already killed 200,000 soldiers of the Mengshi, Yusang army, and in the future, it would kill even more. This was Wang Chang's myriad stars formation. Bang! Countless Mengshi Zhao and Uzan soldiers surged forward from all sides. There was no probing, no vanguard or vanguard. The Mengshi Yusang army had charged with all its might from the very start. Kaiyil. Half of their walls have already been torn down. Once we reach the summit, they'll be utterly defeated. Don't be afraid. We have more people than them, and their ballistae and bows have mostly been used up. White Elephant Corps, hurry. Break through their defense line and we'll win. Concentrate the charge. Tear down their steel walls and pave the way for the Uzun cavalry. His Majesty has decreed that anyone who retreats will be executed and their entire clan exterminated. The eyes of all the Mengshi Yusang soldiers were red, their veins bulging. Brandishing their sabers, spears, swords, and halberds, they charged up the mountain with all their might. Huangfu's Weibo has been opened. If you want to know how I'm doing in real life, you're welcome to follow me. Carrot, carrot, boom. Wang Chong stomped down, causing the air to tremble. An invisible ripple spread out from the summit. The bane of the battlefield halo, now at the 3rd level, was like countless chains binding the bodies of all the Mengshi Yusang soldiers. In an instant, all the soldiers of the Mengshi Yusang army had been weakened by 3 levels. Wang Chong's bane of the battlefield halo had already reached a level where it could greatly influence the outcome of the battle. Peng, a right foot stomped heavily on the ground, causing the earth to shake and the mountains to shake. In the face of Wang Chong's terrifying bane of the battlefield halo, Huishu Wuzong could no longer resist stepping forward and unleashing the Saint Martial halo in his body. A dazzling golden halo swept out like a gale, enveloping the entire army. If one looked down from the sky, one would see that the tens of thousands of Mengshi Yusang army halos were like steel halos. They flickered and flickered, going from extremely dim to almost instantaneously recovering, but in the end, they still did not reach their original level. A Saint Martial realm expert's greatest strength was still their terrifying martial arts and martial skills. However, one that could force an Uzun great general like Huishu Wuzong to use his own energy to weaken Wang Chong's bane of the battlefield halo, one could easily imagine the threat of this halo. Fire! In the rear of the army, a messenger fiercely waved the flag in his hand. Roar! The giants of the skyquaking army roared as they lifted up massive boulders and placed them on the massive siege weapons. Bang bang bang! The mechanism loosened, and huge rocks weighing thousands of kilograms flew into the sky, smashing into the mountain peak opposite them. At the back, beside the huge war machines, rows of huge rocks were densely packed together, covering the ground. They were boundless. In the last few days of the ceasefire, the skyquaking giants raised by Uzun and the Arabs from the distant Sindhu had not been idle. Under the supervision of Mengshi Zhao's men, these skyquaking giants had taken up the role of stonemasons. Their great strength made them the best laborers for cutting stones. In the last few days, the skyquaking giants had accumulated a large number of boulders around the siege weapons. Boom! A huge rock fell on the summit of the mountain, heavily smashing a steel wall that was several zhang tall into the ground. People were thrown up and horses neighed. 1 rock, 2 rocks, 3 rocks. The huge rocks were densely packed like rain, continuously smashing down. Careful! On the top of the mountain, screams could be heard as the soldiers dodged the rain of stones falling from the sky. But in the blink of an eye, one figure after another flew into the sky, shattering boulder after boulder. The eagle, called General Sun Luyue, Luoji, and General Lin Wushou over. Let them deal with the skyquaking giant's stone rain. As Wang Chong spoke, he took out 3 Wuzi steel swords and handed them over. Massive boulders fell from the sky with enormous force. Purely using brute force against them would consume enormous amounts of energy. But Wuzi steel weapons were different. These weapons could easily divide boulders into several pieces, allowing the user to conserve as much energy as possible while also dealing with the threat of the boulders. Order the ballista army to prepare to attack. Wang Chong's eyes flashed with cold light as he continued to issue orders. Yes. A messenger quickly left to carry out the order. In the last battle, the Annam Protectorate had paid far more than the price of 20,000 soldiers and the destruction of their water source. The Mengshi Yusang army had expended an enormous amount of energy to tear down nearly half of the steel walls. In these circumstances, a large buffer zone had appeared, giving the ballistae space to develop. Ballista formation, hear my order. Wang Chang's eyes shone with cold light as he stared down the mountain. Boulders continued to rain down, but Wang Chong remained calm and composed, as if none of this had anything to do with him. 100 steps, 50 steps, 30 steps, 10 steps. At the base of the mountain, the black flood of steel formed by the Mengshi Yusang army was getting closer and closer, picking up speed. Finally, bang! The tens of thousands of Mengshi Yusang soldiers collided with the Annam Protectorate's final defense line. At that moment, the entire mountain range trembled. Archers, first unit, 250 steps to the left. Archers, second unit, 560 steps to the right. Archers, third unit, fire straight ahead. In a few short moments, Wang Chong issued a string of orders. The archers had already used up more than half of their arrows, and they didn't have many left. Wang Chong had to be careful with his every order. He had to think of a way to make good use of each volley of arrows so that the archers could be used to their fullest potential. Uncle Chen, Su Shiping, go to the southeast and provide reinforcements. No matter what, stop Long Qinba. Zhang Long, Zhao Hu, I leave Senior Zhang Shouji to you. No matter what, he can't be harmed. Messenger, pass on my order to General Yang. There are no soldiers left on the mountain, and we don't have enough shield men. Tell him to hold on no matter what. No matter what price we have to pay, we can't let the Mengshi Yusang army break through there. Pass on my order to General Zhang and General Duan. Have them join forces. Executioners, get ready to carry out my orders. Myriad Stars formation, prepare to activate. Chapter 621. The Myriad Stars formation had been tempered to become more and more terrifying after a fierce battle involving hundreds of thousands of people. When they got used to the operation of the formation, the power of the Myriad Stars formation gradually increased. 60,000 Annam Protectorate soldiers combined into one, unleashing the most terrifying killing power. The Mengshi Yusang army was losing an astonishing number of soldiers every moment. Kill! Battle cries shook the heavens and the earth. The battle had reached an extremely intense stage right from the beginning. Corpses of the people of Uzan, Mengshi Zhao, Tang dynasty, and the corpses of war horses were strewn all over the mountains. The blood was like a waterfall, washing down from the top of the mountain, forming a ghastly scene. This was a battle of will against will. At the foot of the mountain, at the rear of the army, rows of shining long sabers were pointed at the sky, ready to strike down at any time. Since the beginning of the war, this was the first time that Mengshi Zhao and Uzan had formed an execution supervision team. Anyone who got cold feet or ran away in the middle of a battle would be beheaded without exception. The War of the Southwest had begun as a simple sneak attack, but it had developed into a protracted war that had exhausted both sides. Even the ferocious and combative Uzan people were eager to end the war and return to the Uzan highlands after experiencing the food shortage and the Mengshi Zhao rice consumption. And Mengshi Zhao's people also understood that they had already broken off with the Tang dynasty, and there was no way back. If they couldn't win this war, what awaited them would be the punishment of the Tang dynasty, and the whole of Irai would be scorched. Everyone's parents, wives, and children would become sacrifices under the iron hooves. Only by winning would there be room for negotiation. Moreover, Mengshi Zhao, Uzan, and the Tang dynasty had been enemies for a long time. So many people had died in this war, and the three parties had long been in a killing frenzy. Clang clang clang. Under the dark clouds, the sounds of swords, shields, axes, halberds, and crossbows rang out on the mountain. Cold light flashed on the mountaintop. Every moment, there would be people falling, and every moment, there would be warhorses neighing as they fell to the ground. In the fierce battlefield, even the Arai elephants, which were wrapped in thick plate armor, were falling one after another under the frenzied attacks, let alone the others. Congratulations to user for killing 6780 Mengshi, Yusang soldiers. Warning. 1,327 Tang Dynasty soldiers died in battle. Congratulations to user for killing 12,400 Mengshi, Yusang soldiers. Warning. 2,100 soldiers of the Tang Dynasty died in battle. The number of people is decreasing rapidly. Congratulations to user for killing 25600 Mengshi, Yusang soldiers. Warning. 3,500 soldiers of the Tang Dynasty have died in battle. Their numbers have been further reduced. On the mountaintop, the winds were howling, causing the flags to rustle. As for the Stone of Destiny, the congratulatory and warning voices in Wang Chang's mind were interwoven together, rushing down like a waterfall. But at this moment, Wang Chong had no mind to pay any attention to them. The battle had already reached an extremely tense and intense state, and Wang Chang's entire body was tense to the extreme. A string of orders was constantly issued from his mouth, and a messenger was rushing in and out of the mountain, passing down order after order. Have General Li Nian and General Zhang Chao reinforce the front lines. Use sound waves to stop those Arai elephants. No matter what, those elephants cannot be allowed to reach the summit. Have Chen Bo lead the saber and axe camp to deal with the Uzun camp. Tell him to first cut off the legs of the horses, then the horses. Cavalry, hear my order. Prepare to move out at any moment. Pass on my order. Anyone who retreats will be executed. With this final order, Wang Chang's eyes turned red. He was not a cold and cruel general who viewed the lives of his soldiers as nothing more than grass, but the fate of the Tang dynasty for the next 100 years, the millions of lives of the Central Plains, and the people of the Southwest, all depended on this battle. Wang Chong had no other choice. There were times when one had to learn to choose. Hold. The eyes of all the Tang dynasty generals on the mountain were red, all of them using all the strength they had in their lives to madly shout. In this final battle, everyone's lives depended on it, and all of them could sense the intense aura of death. This aura was so thick that it made one's scalp go numb and their entire body tremble. But no matter how they fought, the Mengshi, Yusang army at the base of the mountain was like an endless tide. Charge! The Tang people are already an arrow at the end of its flight. If they charge to the summit, only death awaits them. His Majesty has decreed that the first to reach the summit will be made a marquis of 10,000 households. The Prime Minister has decreed that whoever breaks through the Tang people's defenses and is the first to reach the summit will be made Great Warrior Satoru, personally conferred by the Tsenpo. In the vast black flood of steel, Mengshi Zhao and Uzun Empire generals stood on the mountain, constantly roaring and shouting as they supervised the battle. An Uzun horseman's warhorse stumbled over a stone and was forced back several steps before being cut in half by a saber. This sort of frenzied aura permeated the entire mountain. Everyone felt like swords and sabers were pressed against their bodies, urging and forcing them to rush up the mountain crazily. Boom! Another yak horn sounded out from the base of the mountain. This horn had a metallic clanging to it, completely different from the previous ones. Rumble. The earth sank as a storm of energy soared into the sky. At the base of the mountain, a highland steed that was taller than a human stood proudly. On the back of the steed, a burly figure stood as straight as a spear. The cape behind him fluttered in the wind, emitting a wild and domineering aura. Although he did nothing, the figure was like the sun in the sky, instantly attracting everyone's attention. Huishu Wuzong has made his move. In a place where no one was paying attention to, two figures hidden in the shadows of the army were also silently looking at Huishu Wuzong. On the other side, Duan Gechuan nodded. This should be Daluan Ruozen's plan. All his strategies have been completely destroyed by that kid. There's no other plan left. Gechuan, Huishu Wuzong is too domineering and flamboyant. Once he makes his move, he will definitely attract the attention of the entire Tang dynasty. This is our best chance. Another voice said. No. It's not time yet. Duan Gechuan shook his head and rejected the idea without hesitation. In the darkness, his eyes were extremely gloomy. Wait a little longer. In a little while, it will be time for us to completely defeat the Tang people. Your Majesty, don't worry. Your great ambition will definitely come true. I will also do my best to help you succeed. Duan Gechuan's voice revealed a strong will. The ruler and his subject knew each other, and the ruler and his subject would marry each other. Today's Mengshi Zhao Empire was built step by step by him and Jelifang. This was not only Jelifang's, but also his dream. Back then, by the banks of Irai, he had promised that he would definitely help him grow this small country that had been bullied by the banks of Irai into a powerful overlord on the continent. No matter what, he would never let this empire fall here, let alone allow his dream to collapse here. 15 minutes. In at most 15 minutes, I will let your Majesty see the scene of the Annam Protectorate completely ending here. Duan Gechuan looked into the distance, his eyes shining brightly. This was a promise made by a great general to a king. As soon as he finished speaking, everything returned to silence. Kaboom. The earth shook and the mountains shook. Huishu Wuzong had finally joined the battle. Hum. A beam of golden light bloomed on the mountain like the sun. Along with this golden light, a huge Vairocana Buddha appeared, majestic and domineering, standing tall in the mountain range. Endless chanting of Buddhist chants came from the void. Hum. Ma. Ni. Ba. Mi. Hum. The endless light made the Vairocana Buddha that Huishu Wuzong had transformed into look incomparably tall. Just looking at it from afar, it was enough to make people tremble and feel a deep sense of reverence. Roar. However, the mountain shook. Huishu Wuzong could not advance at all. An even bigger god in golden armor roared like an ancient sleeping god. It raised one palm and stood up from the mountain, fighting fiercely with Huishu Wuzong. Boom! 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 The shockwaves from their battle stirred up a huge gale on the mountain. Even the rocks were blown into the air. A battle of this level had already surpassed the imagination of ordinary people. Everyone was retreating. Duan Gechuan still hasn't made his move. While Wang Yan was fighting with Huishu Wuzong with the mighty miracle god formation, on the other side, Xianyu Zhongtong was dressed in martial attire. He was as calm as ice, staring at the bottom of the mountain. The place where Wang Yan and Huishu Wuzong were fighting wasn't too far away from him, but Xianyu Zhongtong didn't move, showing no intention of interfering. To Xianyu Zhongtong, he only had one opponent from the start of this war, Irai General Duan Gechuan, Mengshi Zhao's Irai General. The grudge between Xianyu Zhongtong and this Irai General didn't just start today. Back when Zhangqiu Jianqiong was still overseeing the southwest, Xianyu Zhongtong already had a grudge with him. But no grudge could compare to that crushing defeat on the Irai Plains. This was destined to be a pain that would haunt Xianyu Zhongtong for the rest of his life. Reporting to General, not yet. So far, only Huishu Wuzong has made a move. A voice came from the side. Those who could follow Xianyu Zhongtong were the elites of the Annam Protectorate. Their hatred for Duan Gechuan was no less than Xianyu Zhongtong's. Duan Gechuan has been hiding behind Jelifang all this time. He hasn't made a move yet. At Xianyu Zhongtong's side were the armored generals of the Annam Protectorate army, all of them clustered around him like stars surrounding the moon. With just a breath's worth of movement, they would be able to activate the Vajra deity formation and ambush Duan Gechuan with the strength of the entire army. But before that, no one was allowed to participate in any battle. This doesn't make sense. Under the fluttering black war flag of the Annam Protectorate, Xianyu Zhongtong looked at the powerful figure standing behind Jelifang on the carriage in the distance. His brows slowly furrowed. This is the final day of the war. The fate of the three countries will be decided here. Duan Gechuan has already been silent for quite a few days. There's no reason for him to remain hidden on the final day of the war. Of the three great generals of the Mengshi, Yu Sang sighed, Jelifeng, Hushu Wuzong, and Duan Gechuan, only Hushu Wuzong had taken action. Because Jelifeng was the ruler of Mengshi Zhao, she did not rashly enter the battlefield. From the start of the war until now, Duan Gechuan had remained hidden behind the curtains, not taking action even once. If this had happened before, it would have been fine, but for him to do so now was definitely not normal. Chapter 622. Someone, tell young master to be on full alert. Xianyu Zhongtong's eyebrows rose as he suddenly said. But, the messenger hesitated and glanced up the mountain. At this moment, Wang Chong was already in a state of extreme exhaustion. He was almost single-handedly maintaining the operations of the entire army. 60,000 soldiers against 300,000 soldiers of the Mengshi Yusang army. One could easily imagine how enormous the pressure on Wang Chong was. He was completely focused on commanding the army and had no time to spare for anything else. At a time like this, no one could bear to disturb him with any miscellaneous matters. There's no time to worry about that. If there's a problem on any of the fronts, we can still make up for it, but if Duan Gechuan takes action, all that awaits us is a complete wipeout. I have a feeling that Duan Gechuan is about to take action. That viper of the Arai won't be able to endure for that long. Xianyu Zhongtong said. As his mortal enemy in the southwest, Xianyu Zhongtong had an intense intuition about Duan Gechuan. Duan Gechuan's patience was not a sign of retreat. On the contrary, it was a sign that he was about to explode. The messenger nodded and quickly left. Meanwhile, Xianyu Zhongtong's surroundings fell silent once more, as if this life and death struggle and the intense battle on the battlefield had nothing to do with him. Duan Gechuan, Duan Gechuan, no matter what you're planning, no matter what you want to do, I'll keep my eyes on you. I won't give you the slightest chance. These thoughts flickered through Xianyu Zhongtong's eyes, but he quickly calmed down. In this battle, Duan Gechuan was fated to be his. Time had become meaningless in this place. The battle on the mountain range was extremely tragic, and the intensity had reached an extreme point. Every moment, a large number of Mengshi, Yusang and Tang dynasty soldiers were falling. There were so many corpses that they were even rolling down the mountain. The originally brown mountain had long ago been dyed scarlet. The air was suffused with the thick stench of blood. Almost there. Far away at the foot of the mountain, a pair of eyes blinked and then quickly disappeared without a trace. The surface of the mountain was filled with the sounds of fierce fighting. Near the top of the mountain, the fluttering black flag of the Annam Protectorate was particularly eye-catching. Compared to other places on the mountain, the area under the flagpole was extremely quiet. But under this silence, there was a clear sense of unease and anxiety in the air. Why? What was Duan Gechuan thinking? Are they really not going to do anything? On the mountain, the generals around Xianyu Zhongtong were all staring at the carriage, as well as Duan Gechuan, who was sitting on it. The battle had already reached this point. Both sides had suffered heavy casualties, but Duan Gechuan still showed no signs of making a move. No way. Could it be that Jelifeng and Duan Gechuan are going to end things like this? Xianyu Zhongtong gritted his teeth. In this battle, he had maintained absolute calm for more than 70% of the time. But at this moment, Xianyu Zhongtong had to admit that he had lost his composure. Duan Gechuan was definitely not a weak and incompetent coward. On the contrary, his lethality was far greater than that of others. At this point in the battle, it was impossible for him to remain indifferent. Xianyu Zhongtong knew that there had to be something he had overlooked. There was clearly nothing in front of him, but the sense of danger in the air was getting stronger. This bad feeling made Duan Gechuan go crazy. It can't be, it can't be. Duan Gechuan, you won't be so obedient. Xian Yuzhongtong clenched his fists and stared at the figure in the distance. The figure hidden under the crown and behind Jelifang. The scene of the Battle of Irai suddenly appeared before his eyes. Corpses and blood filled his eyes. There were also tens of thousands of corpses from the Annam Protectorate. Even the vast Irai was dyed red. Rather than saying that they had lost to Meng Shizhao's enormous army, it was more like they had lost to the man who had been hiding in the dark. It was that man who had pierced through the Annam Protectorate's defensive line at the most crucial moment and buried the 100,000 Annam Protectorate soldiers on the rotten Irai plains. No matter what, I will not let that happen again. Xian Yuzhongtong clenched his fists tightly. His eyes were bloodshot. Ah! Suddenly, a cry came from the side. The generals of the Annam Protectorate looked at Xian Yuzhongtong in fear. Sir, blood! Something wet dripped onto his hand. Xian Yuzhongtong touched it with his hand, only to discover that blood had come out of his nose at some point. Did I overuse my brain? Xian Yuzhongtong looked at the blood on his hand mockingly. The blood reflected a pale, twisted, and blurry face. Then, he looked at his own reflection. Suddenly, something seemed to flash across his mind. Xian Yuzhongtong stood there in a daze. His mind was blank. Although there was nothing in front of him, Xian Yuzhongtong's body was cold. Not good. In the blink of an eye, Xian Yuzhongtong suddenly began to scream, his entire face contorted in extreme fear. Young master, be careful. Xian Yuzhongtong abruptly turned toward the summit and shouted at the top of his lungs. Xian Yuzhongtong felt that he was really happy, but unfortunately, it was all too late. Boom! There was an earth-shattering explosion. On the summit, Wang Chong had just looked in Xian Yuzhongtong's direction in shock. In the next moment, it was as if a giant nuclear bomb had fallen on the mountain. Countless Annam Protectorate soldiers screamed as they were blasted into the sky by a terrifying force and sent flying in all directions. Many people were still in the air when they were shredded to pieces by that terrifying force. Their severed limbs flew through the air. Roar! With an earth-shattering roar, a black, two-headed, four-armed demon god wielding a large saber suddenly rose from the ground. It appeared at the edge of the myriad stars formation. Boom! In the southeast, the defensive line that Wang Chong had painstakingly built up collapsed. Countless shield-bearers, axemen, spearmen, and even the ballistae behind them were all shredded to pieces by this one strike. The saber energy dozens of Zhang Long even split the ground in two, plowing a deep trench. And within the trench, a thick corrosive black mist even emerged. Ah! Shrill screams filled the air. At that moment, it was as if time had stopped. Duan Gechuan. As he stared at the massive gap that had been torn open, Wang Chong's heart stopped, a look of despair appearing on his youthful face. How could it be him? The war between the Tang dynasty and Mengshi, Yusang had reached an extremely crucial moment. Wang Chong had never imagined that Duan Gechuan would strike at this moment, and without any warning whatsoever. What made Wang Chong even more terrified was that Duan Gechuan had chosen the weakest and most flawed part of the Myriad Stars formation. Boom! The Myriad Stars formation had been operating like a massive machine, devouring countless Mengshi, Yusang soldiers, but at this moment, it suddenly came to a halt as if it had suffered a heavy blow. Duan Gechuan's attack was like a dagger stabbing into the heart of the Annam Protectorate, completely disrupting Wang Chong's rhythm and shattering the Myriad Stars formation. Mengshi Zhao soldiers, attack with me. Today will be the day that the Annam Protectorate is completely buried. Duan Gechuan's voice came from the mouth of the two-headed, four-armed demon god, echoing over the battlefield. This was the first time he had made a sound on this mountain, but it had changed the entire battlefield, reversed the course of the war in the southwest. Roar! Attack with the great general! Kill our way to the summit and slaughter the Annam Protectorate. The great general is mighty. Our Mengshi Zhao is about to win. The morale of the dispirited Mengshi Zhao army instantly soared the moment Duan Gechuan appeared. Thousands of Meng Shizhao soldiers roared and followed Duan Gechuan, madly charging toward the summit through the gap Duan Gechuan had opened. Kaiyil. It was not just Meng Shizhao's army. Countless Uzun soldiers followed close behind. The effects of Duan Gechuan's actions were devastating, and like a chain reaction, the entire Annam Protectorate on the summit was pushed back again and again. In just a few moments, the gap Duan Gechuan had opened had grown several times larger. Kaiyil. The shouts from the summit shook the heavens like a tsunami. The tens of thousands of soldiers of the Mengshi, Yusang army surged forward like a tide, charging into the gap. Ha ha ha, wonderful. The great general has succeeded. At the base of the mountain, Fenjie heartily laughed, his face red with excitement. Gechuan, you truly have not disappointed us. In the middle of the army, Jelifeng's eyes shone with a dazzling light. At this point in the battle, Meng Shizhao and Uzun were finally showing signs of winning this battle. From Jelifeng's perspective, the Annam Protectorate on the summit was already in tatters, on the verge of collapse. Whether it was the timing, the location, or the methods, Duan Gechuan had executed them all to perfection. This was a true sure-kill strike. Xianyu Zhongtong, you've lost. Jelifeng couldn't help but smile as she gazed at the summit where the black banner was fluttering. From start to finish, Xianyu Zhongtong and his generals had not moved at all. How could Jelifeng and Duan Gechuan not understand what he was thinking? Alas, when the devil grew 1 foot, the Tao grew 10. In the end, Xianyu Zhongtong had still lost to Duan Gechuan. This is impossible. Chapter 623. Xianyu Zhongtong could not believe it. He had been staring at Duan Gechuan with his eyes wide open, but in the end, Duan Gechuan appeared on the other side of the mountain and chose the most subtle moment to tear apart the myriad stars formation that Wang Chong had painstakingly built in one fell swoop. Xianyu Zhongtong had put up a lot of defenses, but in the end, he still failed. The screams of the Annam Protectorate were like a huge mockery, ringing in Xianyu Zhongtong's ears. I've been deceived by them. Xianyu Zhongtong fiercely clenched his fists. After his initial shock, no matter how slow Xianyu Zhongtong's reactions were, he still understood that Duan Gechuan had used a trick to steal the sky and switch the sun in front of him. The figure standing on the carriage, hidden in the darkness, was definitely not Duan Gechuan. Jelifeng. A thought appeared in his mind, and Xianyu Zhongtong's mind became clear. In the entire Meng Shizhao Empire, only Jelifeng could release the same aura as Duan Gechuan. And if Jelifeng was playing the role of Duan Gechuan, then there was no doubt that the Jelifeng on the carriage was fake. Xianyu Zhongtong knew that he had made a huge mistake. He had been focusing on Duan Gechuan and had neglected Jelifeng, the ruler of Meng Shizhao. Despicable. In a flash, this thought flashed through his mind. In the next moment, Xianyu Zhongtong instantly cast the strongest Vajra formation in the entire Annam Protectorate. Roar! An earth-shattering roar of fury rang out, and before everyone's eyes, a gigantic heavenly god, whose entire body shone with a metallic luster, rose from the mountain with a loud rumble. Duan Gechuan, you shameless villain, fight me to the death. Xianyu Zhongtong's angry voice was like thunder, echoing in the sky above the mountain peak. Even the whole mountain range trembled and buzzed in his angry voice. Boom! A huge foot traversed the space of over 100 feet, quickly stepping in Duan Gechuan's direction. Duan Gechuan was quickly blocked by Xianyu Zhongtong. The two huge clones were locked in a fierce battle on the mountain. From the beginning until now, this was the first time that a battle between the commanders of the two teams had appeared. Wang Yan versus Huishu Wuzang versus Xianyu Zhongtong versus Duan Gechuan. However, nothing could be changed. Duan Gechuan's appearance had completely defeated the Annam Protectorate at the top of the mountain. Only defeat awaited the Annam Protectorate. Ha, Imperial Father, we won. Fenjie roared with laughter. Standing on the carriage, he tore off his dragon robe. The plan had been completed. As the crown prince of the Mengshi Zhao Empire, there was no longer any need for him to hide his identity and pretend to be his father. Jie, you've worked hard. In the future, the Southwest will be the world of us father and son. After this battle, you and I, father and son, will forever be recorded in the annals of history as meritorious subjects of Erai's 6 Shao. Jelifeng also couldn't suppress the excitement and joy in his heart. He didn't know how long he had waited for this battle. After paying so much, this moment had finally arrived. Mengshi Zhao shouldn't be content to live in a corner of the world, and he, Jelifeng, shouldn't be just a little ruler of Erai. Swallowing the Southwest and ruling over the world, this was his deepest dream. And today, this day was finally going to come true. Imperial Father, your child is going. I want to become the first crown prince of the Mengshi Zhao Empire to plant his war banner on the mountain. Fenjie's face was flushed with excitement. Leaping off the chariot, he mounted an Erai steed and galloped toward the summit. Young master, the Southwest has been lost. Young master, there are many casualties in the southeast. Young master, they have too many people. We're simply no match for them. Young master, what should we do now? Young master, anxious and panicked voices rang out in Wang Chang's ears. In the southeast and southwest, the entire Annam Protectorate's defense line was on the verge of falling, and countless pieces of news were gathering in Wang Chang's hands. The soldiers of the Mengshi, Yusang army were pouring into the gap, and through the widening of the gap, they were pushing in other directions. The entire Annam Protectorate was facing an unprecedented calamity. In a few short moments, the Annam Protectorate had suffered unprecedented casualties. Warning. 12344 casualties in the Annam Protectorate. Warning. 14056 casualties in the Annam Protectorate. Warning. 18423 casualties in the Annam Protectorate. Warning. 21714 casualties in the Annam Protectorate. The Stone of Destiny's warning cascaded through Wang Chang's mind like a waterfall. In a few short moments, the entire summit was covered in corpses. The Annam Protectorate had lost more people than it had in that final battle. Wang Chang's vision was a sea of blood, and the air was suffocating with the stench of blood. The savage laughter of the Mengshi, Yusang army resounded over the summit. Wang Chong could even see an Uzun soldier not far from him. The summit was on the verge of falling. Countless days and nights of defense were on the verge of complete failure. From being as solid as a boulder to completely collapsing, all of this happened in just a split second. At this moment, Wang Chong felt his body go cold, like he had been plunged into an icehouse. But it only took a moment for Wang Chong to react. Clang! As everyone watched, Wang Chong suddenly unsheathed his sword, the cold Wuzi steel sword pointing to the heavens. General Zhang, General Yang, assemble the shield men and the axe men to reinforce the southwest. Archers, knock the last arrow. 50 steps ahead, long shot. Everyone else, follow me. Messengers, pass on my order. Everyone put all their strength into the formation. The eagle, I leave this place to you. Everyone else, follow me. In the chaos, Wang Chang's voice became the backbone of the army, stabilizing the Annam Protectorate. The army that had been on the verge of collapse instantly began to show signs of stabilizing. And the myriad stars formation that had been on the verge of collapse also began to show signs of beginning to circulate once more. But even the myriad stars formation seemed to find it hard to hold on against the endless ranks of the Mengshi, Yusang army. There was not much time left for Wang Chong. Young master, give the order. There were many figures on the summit, and it took only a few short moments for several dozen people to gather behind Wang Chong. At this point in the battle, not even Wang Chong had many soldiers he could use. Clang! Sword in hand, Wang Chong led the several dozen soldiers behind him toward the gap in the Mengshi, Yusang army. Without too many reinforcements and without too many powerful generals, Wang Chong resolutely charged forward. No matter what, I won't admit defeat. Wang Chong tightly gripped his woozy steel sword, a thought flitting through his mind, and then he charged into the air. Single step consecutive slash. A cold light flashed through the air. A moment later, Wang Chong descended from the sky, his sword slashing through an Ozen horseman. Squelch. A fountain of blood sprayed into the air. The horseman was still seated on his horse, but his head was sent flying into the air. Bang! In another flash, Wang Chong charged at another Ozen horseman, a second head flying into the air. A third, a fourth, a fifth, wherever Wang Chong passed, heads would roll. Kill him. He's Wang Chong. A Mengshi Zhao soldier shouted, his eyes brightening when he saw Wang Chong. In an instant, countless soldiers surged forward. If there was one person in the Mengshi Yusang army that everyone wanted to kill, it was definitely Wang Chong. Not just the commanders, but even the lowest-ranking soldiers knew that the War of the Southwest had dragged on for so long and had suffered so many casualties because of a person called Wang Chong. Kill. Kill Wang Chong. Make him a marquis of 10,000 households. Countless soldiers began to change directions and charge at Wang Chong. Leaping dragon spear. Bang! Wang Chong's body flickered as he shot into the sky like a bolt of lightning. As everyone watched, the air howled as a massive azure flood dragon descended from the sky, its might as it floated in the air. But before anyone could react, the azure flood dragon had already vanished. Boom! A massive fissure appeared in the sky, its power so great that it even left a massive gorge in the ground. Behind Wang Chong, corpses were strewn all over the ground, heads flying everywhere. Wang Chong's woozy steel sword was practically unstoppable in this dense army. But Wang Chong's slaughter had not only failed to restrain the Mengshi Yusang army, but had instead attracted even more soldiers to charge at him. Kill Wang Chong and we'll win. Avenge our brothers. Kill him. Don't be afraid. At this moment, all the soldiers of the Mengshi Yusang army became extremely fierce. Death and blood only served to stimulate the savagery and bloodthirst in their hearts. But Wang Chong could no longer see any of this. At this moment, Wang Chong's heart was dripping with blood, and there was only one thought in his mind. Kill. 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 Die. 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 30 years of fame and dust, 8,000 li of clouds and moon. From the capital until now, Wang Chong had persevered for countless days and nights, plotting countless methods, preparing countless things, but now, everything was about to turn to dust. Duan Gechuan's final attack had dealt Wang Chong a fatal blow. All Wang Chong's efforts, all his hardships, were about to turn to dust. No matter what, I will never admit defeat. Wang Chong's eyes turned red. Clang! A bloody cold light flew out from the left side of Wang Chong's waist, circling in the air and stabbing into the body of a Mengshi Zhao soldier, and then a second, a third, a fourth. Boundless blood energy surged into Wang Chong's body. Stimulated by this blood energy, Wang Chong's aura grew stronger and stronger. 1, 2, 3, 4, Mengshi Yusang soldiers continued to fall. Wang Chong was like a tireless war machine, fighting alone in the vast Mengshi Yusang army. Boom! Just when the battle was at its most intense, there was a massive boom that caused the entire mountain to fiercely shudder. The eastern line has been broken. The eastern line has been broken. In the blink of an eye, a heaven-shaking roar came from behind him. Wang Chong's heart chilled as he turned his head. Buzz! Bzzz. Time seemed to stop for a moment. Under the gloomy sky, the lines to the southeast began to crumble. Warhorses neighed as the Tibetan cavalry rode up the mountain on their highland steeds, savage smiles on their faces. Chapter 624. Buzz. In that instant, Wang Chong's entire body went cold, and his heart turned to ash. A second gap. The gap that Duangachuan had blasted open had not yet been plugged, but a second gap had appeared in the myriad stars formation. Wang Chong looked around and saw that there were even more places where he could not hold on any longer. The mountains rose and fell, and the screams of the Annam Protectorate's people on the verge of death could be heard everywhere. Could it be that the heavens really want my Tang dynasty to die? In that instant, Wang Chong's entire body trembled, and his heart bled. Endless pain surged like a tide, so intense that it was almost suffocating. Why? Why is it like this? Why did the heavens let me be reborn, but still make me experience all this? Could it be that the previous life was not enough? In this life, the Central Plains, the Tang dynasty, must experience the fate of the previous life? Blood flowed from Wang Chong's eyes, and a voice in his heart roared with indignation and anger. In his days, scenes from his last life once more appeared before his eyes, the Central Plains scorched by the flames of war, the tattered and broken dragon banners, the crumbling Great Tang, the tens of thousands of terrified corpses strewn across the plains, the common people reduced to bones, and the foreign invaders galloping through the rivers of steel and horses, spreading death and despair. All of this had begun with the collapse of the Southwest. If he could not even stop the tragedy of the Southwest, how could he stop the fate of the Tang dynasty? At this moment, Wang Chong was in so much pain that he could not breathe. The pain, indignation, powerlessness, and remorse from his previous life when he was about to die once again surfaced in his heart. No, even if I die, I will not let this happen again before my eyes. Wang Chong fiercely gripped the Wuzi steel sword in his right hand and the little yin-yang sword in his left hand. The veins on the back of his hand bulged, and he suddenly let out an earth-shattering roar in the formation. Bang! As if in response to Wang Chong's call, a massive bolt of azure lightning suddenly shot through the dark clouds. Warhorses neighed in the neigh, and the sudden appearance of this lightning bolt left all the Mengshi, Yusang soldiers dumbfounded. At the foot of the mountain, even Daluan Ruozan was surprised. No matter what, I will never admit defeat. No matter what, I will never admit defeat. No matter what, I will never admit defeat. There has never been a savior in this world. There is no such thing as fate. I am the master of my own fate. The voice in Wang Chong's heart grew louder and louder. In the darkness, a power that he had never felt before was burning in his body like a flame, and it was growing stronger and stronger. Anger, boundless anger, unwillingness, intense unwillingness. In the next moment. Clang! A clear sword cry resounded through the void. Wang Chong raised the long sword in his hand and abruptly soared into the sky. Fight! 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 Kill! 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 Die! Die! Even if millions of people retreat, I will never retreat. Even if everyone gives up, I will never give up. The Southwest will not be defeated, the Tang dynasty will not be defeated, and I will also not lose. The last sentence turned into an earth-shattering roar. Swish! The long sword swung through the air, and row after row of Mengshi, Yusang soldiers were felled. Roiling blood energy surged out of the bodies of these soldiers and gathered in Wang Chong's body. This surging blood energy was like some sort of bait, stimulating something deeply hidden in Wang Chong's body. Cack-lack. His bones began to crack as Wang Chong's body impossibly grew taller, and an inconceivably powerful energy exploded from his body. Rumble. His dantian shuddered, and in a single breath, a brand new halo of thorns appeared under Wang Chong's feet. At almost the same time, Wang Chong finally broke through the bottleneck that had prevented him from reaching the profound martial realm, truly stepping into the profound martial realm. Buzz! In a fierce gale, a bloody energy spread from the roots of Wang Chong's hair to the ends. In the blink of an eye, Wang Chong's pitch-black hair had transformed into a bewitching bloody hair. It was not just his hair. Even Wang Chong's eyes had turned bloody, brimming with killing intent, madness, and brutality. But at this moment, Wang Chong could no longer see anything. Everything in front of him was a bloody red. No matter what, I will never lose. An increasingly intense unwillingness and rage began to grow in Wang Chang's mind. Rumble. Wang Chang's speed suddenly increased as he shot forward like a bolt of lightning. Rumble. A faint bloody blade flashed through the air, and large swathes of the Mengshi, Yusang army were felled. I won't lose, I definitely won't lose. Wang Chang's figure once more shot through the air. Screams filled the air as more Mengshi, Yusang soldiers were felled. Roiling blood energy, pulled by an invisible energy, madly poured into Wang Chang's body. The little yin-yang art within Wang Chang's body rumbled. Now that he had broken into the profound martial realm and broken free from the shackles of cultivation, the roiling blood energy stimulated Wang Chang's strength to madly grow. Boom! With a jolt of his dantian, Wang Chong instantly reached Tier 1 of the profound martial realm. Behind him, several dozen Mengshi, Yusang cavalry were felled along with their horses. Capture Wang Chong and make him a marquis of 10,000 households. Endless Mengshi, Yusang soldiers excitedly charged forward, and it seemed like they would never be able to kill all of them. Swish! A cold light flashed, and screams filled the air as heads flew into the air. Profound Martial Tier 2. Wang Chang's strength was still soaring. Kill him. He's only one person. Don't be afraid. With a heaven-shaking roar, a massive figure climbed up the mountain. This was a sky-quaking giant. Roar! Before he could even stabilize himself, a thick metal cudgel like the trunk of a tree swept toward Wang Chong with the weight of Mount Tai. He's mine. The sky-quaking giant roared, speaking in a language that only he could understand. Clang! The thick metal cudgel suddenly split in two, the cut as smooth as a mirror. The massive sky-quaking giant stared at the half of the cudgel in his hand in a daze, but before he could react. Pooh! A long sword pierced deeply into his heart, cutting off his life force. Profound Martial Tier 3. The massive sky-quaking giant's eyes went round as he fell to the ground in front of Wang Chong, his vigorous blood energy surging into Wang Chang's body. Kill! 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 Kill everyone in front of me. Strength, I need a huge amount of strength, an endless amount of strength. The blood in front of Wang Chang's eyes grew redder and redder. Boom! Leaping Dragon Spear. Wang Chong shot forward once more, but this time, the illusion of an azure flood dragon in the sky had become a dark red flood dragon. Boom! Wang Chong shot down from the sky and landed on the summit. Aya! Hundreds of Mengshi, Yusang soldiers collapsed, bloody mists gushing out of their bodies and flooding into Wang Chang's body. Wang Chang's strength rose once more, Profound Martial Tier 4. Damn it! What's that? As Wang Chang's leaping dragon spear descended, the blazing bloody light in the middle of the army was extremely conspicuous, attracting the attention of a powerful profound martial realm Mengshi Zhao general. Although it was impossible to see the figure in the bloody light, there was no doubt that the bloody light had already obstructed the army. Clang! The profound martial realm Mengshi Zhao general unsheathed his sword, his eyes flashing with cold light as he mounted an Irai steed and galloped toward the summit like a bolt of lightning. 50 zhang, 30 zhang, 20 zhang. When he was only 10 zhang away, boom! In a cold flash of light, the profound martial realm Mengshi Zhao general leaped from the back of his steed, leaping over countless Mengshi, Yusang soldiers and sweeping up a furious gale as he slashed down at Wang Chong. Boom! The profound martial realm general of Mengshi Zhao was upside down, his sword clashing with Wang Chong's. With a loud rumble, smoke and dust billowed, and Gang Qi surged. A circle of black and red qi violently exploded with the two of them as the center. Wang Chong's frenzied slaughter had finally been stopped by the appearance of this general. Humph, brat, you're dead for sure. The Mengshi Zhao general roared, his eyes fiercely staring into the depths of the bloody light. But a moment later, squelch! A sword was thrust into his heart. The Mengshi Zhao general's eyes went wide as he stared in disbelief at the sword thrust into his heart. Then, with a swing of Wang Chang's sword, he was thrown to the ground, where he lay motionless. Profound Martial Realm Tier 5. After absorbing the energy of the Mengshi Zhao general, Wang Chang's strength had once more swelled. Kill! 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 Power, I need limitless power. Kacha! Wang Chang's joints swelled, and his originally tall body suddenly grew even larger. Around him, a thick fog gathered and did not dissipate. The little yin-yang art's power was at its greatest in this intense battle. The more Wang Chong killed, the more energy he absorbed, and the more terrifying his strength became. His strength, speed, and dexterity all increased, completely incomparable to before. This was the first time that the little yin-yang art had displayed its terrifying might on a proper battlefield. A voice resounded in Wang Chang's mind, but it was quickly drowned out by the Stone of Destiny's warnings. And Wang Chong didn't hear it at all. Boom! Wang Chong pressed close to the ground and charged forward. Boom! A powerful energy exploded. Aya! Screams filled the air as countless Mengshi, Yusang soldiers and their horses were thrown into the air. Kill him! Two Mengshi, Yusang generals rushed forward, one on the left and one on the right, attacking together. However, in the next moment, whoosh, whoosh, two massive heads flew into the air. The two of them couldn't even keep up with his speed, couldn't keep up with his figure. Profound Martial Tier 6. With the energy of these Mengshi, Yusang generals, Wang Chang's strength had risen by another level. Chaos, slaughter, blood, all of this had become nourishment for Wang Chang's strength. Even more frightening was that there was an even more powerful energy in Wang Chang's mind, urging him to get stronger. Kill, kill, kill. Fight, fight, fight. An intense killing intent began to madly swell in Wang Chang's mind, so intense that the veins in Wang Chang's body began to bulge and twist under the pressure of this killing intent. Chapter 625. Who is that? Mengshi Zhao's great general has already opened a gap, so why hasn't he charged in yet? On another battlefield at the base of the mountain, the eyes of an Tier 7 profound martial Uzun general chilled at the sight of the thousands of Mengshi, Yusang soldiers exploding into the air, an astonishing killing intent flashing through his eyes. Clang! Unsheathing a peerless scimitar that gleamed with a cold light, the Uzun general exuding a powerful aura flew toward the summit. A few moments later, bang! The two swords collided and a monstrous strength invaded the atmosphere. The general of the 7th Xian Qi layer released a monstrous amount of qi, it was like thunder. The monstrous qi even made the soldiers around him fly away. Beneath his feet, a vast halo of thorns enveloped the area. An invisible energy condensed into a yellow mist, which passed through the feet of this Tibetan general and madly gathered in his body, instantly increasing his strength. Translated by Hypersheep 325. The Halo of the Great Earth. The Uzun did not understand the laws as well as the people of the Central Plains. Although this Tier 7 profound martial general did not have a very high understanding of the laws, it was enough for him to absorb energy from the earth and increase his own strength. But this lightning-like strike that could split a boulder had collided with the strength of a mountain. Boom! An explosion of energy almost flattened the entire mountain. Wang Chang's bewitching red hair danced in the wind, his entire body red like a brand. With just his two swords, he had managed to block the full-strength strike of the Uzun general. How could this be? The Uzun general's pupils constricted as he stared at the savage and crazed red eyes, his heart turning cold. He had put all his strength into this strike, but his opponent's two hands were raised, his feet seemingly rooted to the earth, not moving at all. The power of this strike was enough to split apart steel, but Wang Chang's body was like a mountain. Not only did it not budge, it even sent a powerful force back at him. How could his body be this powerful? General Uzun's eyes were wide open, his face was filled with disbelief. Wang Chang's strength definitely didn't exceed the 7th stage of the profound martial realm. But under the same cultivation, Lin Yun didn't even move an inch after taking his attack head-on. Lin Yun's internal organs would definitely be heavily injured. Even he couldn't do this. No, it was impossible for any cultivator in the 7th stage of the profound martial realm, unless their physical body was strong to an inhuman level. However, what shocked General Uzun had yet to begin. The sound of gears turning could be heard coming from the void. The light behind Wang Chong changed, and a gigantic and mighty 6-armed King Kong vaguely appeared. There were also faint sounds of Buddhist incantations. 6-armed Ksitigarbha Vajra. Isn't this the unique skill of our great snow mountain temple? General Uzun was shocked. It was one thing for this fellow's body to be so powerful that he could block one of his swords. But he also knew a supreme skill of the Uzun Plateau's great snow mountain temple. Boom! Supported by the 6-armed Ksitigarbha vaguely, Wang Chong struck out with both hands. Boom! This single strike sent this Uzun Tier 7 profound martial general tumbling across the ground, leaving a trail of dust in his wake as he was sent flying. This is impossible. A hint of shock flashed through General Uzun's face. While he was still stunned by the fact that he had been sent flying, a bloody light flashed over his head. Swish! He felt a pain in his neck as one of the heads of the 6 suns was sent flying. What speed! General Uzun's vision went dark, and he knew nothing else. 10, 100, 1,000, hundreds, thousands of Mengshi, Yusang soldiers fell around Wang Chong. Human corpses, horse corpses, and broken swords piled together, creating a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. More and more corpses fell around Wang Chong. He was like a tireless machine, madly slaughtering his way through the summit. The killing intent exuding from his body grew thicker and thicker, causing even the air around him to twist. And the stellar energy in the bodies of the dead Mengshi, Yusang soldiers was constantly extracted by the little Yinyang sword, transforming it into bloody mist that fused into Wang Chong's body, constantly increasing his strength. The little Yinyang art was known as the world's #1 evil art, and its ability to endlessly increase a martial artist's strength was being displayed to its fullest at this moment. Slowly, not even Wang Chong noticed it, but a powerful and oppressive aura began to erupt from his body. At the start, all the Mengshi, Yusang soldiers had tirelessly charged forward, but now, as long as they got within a certain range of Wang Chong, they would begin to feel an intense unease and tremble. It was like the person standing in front of them was not a person, but a demon god. What's going on? How did he get so strong? After fighting for so long, why hasn't his internal energy weakened, but gotten stronger and stronger? This fellow isn't human at all. No one can last this long. Everyone, be careful. Don't get too close to him. Why is it like this? When I get close, my entire body trembles, and I can't even hold my saber. At the start, Wang Chong had seemed like he could rely on numbers to kill him, but now that Wang Chong had advanced to profound martial Tier 7 and Tier 8, everything had changed. All of them sensed an extreme danger from Wang Chong, like a sharp blade that could stab into their hearts at any moment. That fellow, is he the commander of the Tang dynasty? In a place where Wang Chong could not see, a figure stood, his eyes slightly narrowed and exuding a cold light. Wang Chong's appearance had greatly changed, but Tumi Sangza was still able to determine his identity from his thin figure. After fighting for more than half a month, that youth forever standing beneath the banner on the high mountain had been deeply branded into the minds of every Mengshi, Yusang commander. Uzun's side was particularly different. Everyone now knew that the prime minister hated that youth of the Tang dynasty to the bone. He had even said that even if the entire Annam protectorate was to be let off, that youth called Wang Chong could not be spared. If I kill him, I'll be the #1 warrior of the plateau. Tumi Sangza leaped onto the massive metal giant next to him and stood on its left shoulder. A moment later, the earth rumbled as the black metal giant raised one of its massive feet and began to stride up the mountain with Tumi Sangza. Behind him, another steel giant followed closely with countless iron men. Out of the way. An Uzun voice thundered over the summit. All the Uzun soldiers retreated like the receding tide. Only Meng Shizhao and the others had no idea what he was talking about. However, before they could react, the sky darkened. Two mountain-sized iron fists, one on the left and one on the right, brought along gusts of strong winds as they smashed towards the bloody light on the mountain peak like lightning. Bang! The earth sank and shuddered like a deck encountering a hidden wave. Under everyone's shocked gazes, the fists of the two metal giants smashed down on Wang Chang's head. Hiss! There was a gasp. On the summit, Wang Chong raised his head to the sky, his two red-hot arms firmly blocking the fists of the metal giants. The two fists that could shatter mountains had failed to injure him in the slightest. At this moment, everyone's eyes were suffused with deep apprehension. Humph! Take my saber. An icy voice came from above. As Wang Chong was doing his best to block the two metal giants, Tumi Sengza leaped down from the metal giant's shoulder. Boom! A saber glow tore through the air. Tumi Sengza had become one with his saber, leaving behind a saber energy Tensum Zhang in the air as he slashed down at Wang Chong. Boom! A blood-red shroud of light erupted from Wang Chong's body. Within the shroud of light, Wang Chong raised his two swords to block Tumi Sengza's sure-kill strike. But Tumi Sengza's strike contained boundless strength that sent Wang Chong's saber crashing into the earth. The rocks beneath his feet shattered, and in the end, only half his body was left on the ground. Damn it! He didn't die even after this. Tumi Sengza's pupils constricted as he stared at the ground in shock. He had used the two metal giants to restrain Wang Chong so that he could use his final strike to kill Wang Chong. But he hadn't expected that Wang Chong would still be alive. Bzzz. Tumi Sengza swung his scimitar, preparing to strike while the iron was hot with a furious storm of attacks. But in a flash of bloody light, Wang Chong suddenly vanished from in front of him. This was completely outside of Tumi Sengza's expectations, but before he could react, he heard an indistinct but sharp whistle. It was faintly discernible, but it was incredibly sharp. It was so fast that even Tumi Sengza was inwardly alarmed. Not good. Tumi Sengza was alarmed. Without thinking, he leapt into the air towards the nearby metal giant. Boom! At almost the same time, there was a flash of bloody light as a sharp sword energy swept past where Tumi Sengza had been standing. The sword energy missed, but the metal fists of the two metal giants were cleaved in two and sent flying high into the air, the cuts as smooth as a mirror. Even Tumi Sengza was secretly alarmed at this sight, goosebumps rising all over his body. If he had been just a little slower, the one cleaved in two would not have been the metal giants, but him. But this was not the end. The bloody arc of light flashed as it once more slashed at Tumi Sengza. Boom! Tumi Sengza had just raised his hand to block this sword when another bloody light swept past him, but this time, it was not in front of him, but behind him. How could he be so fast? Tumi Sengza was stronger than Jiao Sero, let alone those ordinary commanders. In terms of martial arts, not even Wang Chong was a match for him. But the speed and dexterity Wang Chong displayed was something not even an expert of Tumi Sengza's level could achieve. Fast. Too fast, too fast. Chapter 626. Clang. 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 Tumi Sengza pushed his strength to the limit, his scimitar impenetrable as he put all his strength into each attack. But in the face of Wang Chong's furious barrage of attacks, he could only parry, unable to counterattack. Wang Chong's speed had completely surpassed the limits of his cultivation, and not even Tumi Sengza could keep up. When Wang Chong reached profound martial tiers 7 and tier 8, his phantom steps had undergone a qualitative transformation, reaching a new level. The more Tumi Sengza fought, the more alarmed he became. In the end, he couldn't help but shout. Uzun soldiers, hear my order. The one Prime Minister wants to kill, Wang Chong, is here. Everyone, come and kill him. Tumi Sangza's panicked roar exploded over the summit, his voice echoing over the entire battlefield. Not only did it attract the attention of the generals of the Uzungari royal lineage, it also attracted the attention of Daluan Ruozan at the base of the mountain. Wang Chong. At the base of the mountain, Daluan Ruozan's eyes chilled as he turned like a bolt of lightning toward the source of the voice. Wang Chong's name was like a curse that instantly stimulated Daluan Ruozan. If there was one thing that Daluan Ruozan was more concerned about than the outcome of this battle, it was Wang Chong's life or death. Pass on my order. Ignore the Annam Protectorate. First kill Wang Chong. No matter what, he can't be allowed to leave alive. Long Qinba and Siren Xiangxiong, have them go as well. Daluan Ruozan stared at the summit where the bloody light had come from, making no attempt to conceal the naked killing intent in his eyes. Buzz! Daluan Ruozan's order quickly spread to the entire battlefield, and with this order, the Uzun army on the mountain immediately began to transform. The Prime Minister has ordered us to kill Wang Chong. Everyone, listen up. Southeast direction, kill your way to the top. From the top of the mountain, there was a roar that sounded like a landslide or a tsunami. Looking down from the sky, one could only hear the neighing of war horses. Countless Uzun cavalrymen were charging towards the mountain top in the southeast. Kill Wang Chong there. He will be conferred the title of the strongest warrior of the plateau. One by one, the war horses leaped up the mountain peak. The Uzun general on the back of the horse had a gaze as sharp as a knife, and a powerful aura burst out from his body like a hurricane. Compared to ordinary soldiers, these Tibetan commanders were much more valiant and ferocious. Rumble, the steel trembled, and one after another, great thorny halo descended. Each great thorny halo represented an Uzun profound martial realm general. Nay! Amidst the shocking neighing of the warhorses, more than 10 Uzun generals had ferocious looks in their eyes. They became one with their horses, and they swung their scimitars towards Wang Chong from all directions. Bang! 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 One by one, the warhorses fell to the ground, and huge bloody holes appeared on their bodies. Before they could even get close, all the Uzun generals were attacked like lightning. Nay! One of the Uzun generals was riding on the back of his horse, and his body was still in the position of leaping forward. In the next moment, a bloody light flashed, and this Uzun general was instantly cut in half along with his horse. Bang! 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 A second, a third, a fourth. Before the Uzun generals could get very far, they were cut down by Wang Chong on the summit. After they died, their inner energies condensed into a bloody mist that filled the air and surged into Wang Chong's body. Cack-lack! In just a few short moments, Wang Chong's strength once more rose. From profound martial level 7, profound martial level 8, all the way to profound martial level 9, and then to the peak of profound martial level 9. Not good. Tumi Sangza paled. No matter how slow he was, he now realized that he had made a massive mistake. His original intention had been to summon more top-class experts to help him out of his predicament and attack Wang Chong with him, killing this mortal malady of the Uzun Empire on the summit. But Tumi Sangza had forgotten that with Wang Chong's current cultivation, many of the Uzun generals were no longer a match for him. If these low-level Uzun generals charged onto the summit, they would only become nourishment for Wang Chong. With their cultivation stripped away, Wang Chong would become even more terrifying. When Wang Chong was only at profound martial level 7 or 8, he had already been able to threaten him, even make him feel like he was hovering on the edge of death. Now that he had obtained the inner energies of these Uzun generals, wouldn't that mean, just as this thought flashed through his mind, Tumi Sangza's body went stiff. A faint bloody mark as thin as a hair suddenly appeared on his forehead, spreading from his forehead to his nose, mouth, chest. In the end, it spread to the metal giant's body, cleaving the metal giant in two. I didn't think that I would die to his hand. Tumi Sangza's eyes went round, his entire body freezing. Wang Chong was too fast, too fast. He didn't even have time to unsheath his saber before he was slain by Wang Chong. Bang! As countless people watched, Tumi Sangza, standing on the shoulder of the metal giant, exploded. At the same time that he died, the Iron Men and Iron Men summoned under the effect of the halo of black iron also fell heavily and turned into countless iron filings and fragments. Kill! Kill! An unending stream of Uzun soldiers charged up the mountain, drowning Wang Chong in a massive wave. In this sort of situation, any general, no matter how powerful, would be doomed to death from exhaustion. But Wang Chong was different. He was like an inexhaustible killing machine, constantly unleashing attacks from the summit. More and more corpses piled up, the corpses of the Mengshi, Yusang soldiers piling up into a sea. In this slaughter, Wang Chong grew stronger and stronger. In the end, under countless fearful gazes, he charged toward the imperial martial realm that countless martial artists looked up to. I won't lose. I definitely won't lose. I'll never lose. The shouts in Wang Chong's mind were getting louder and louder. He could no longer feel any pain. Countless sabers and swords slashed at his body, but they were either blocked by his tough armor or bounced off by his boundless bloody stellar energy. 1 quarter, 2 quarters, 3 quarters, time had lost all meaning to Wang Chong. He had already forgotten the outside world, forgotten himself, forgotten everything. The only thought left in his mind was to fight. The corpses piled higher and higher on the mountain. After some time, a majestic and scorching energy like the lava of a volcano erupted from Wang Chong's body. Rumble. Wang Chong only heard a heaven-shaking boom in his mind. In a flash, the entire world seemed to fall silent. For the first time, the Mengshi, Yusang soldiers, who seemed to never fear death, showed fear and panic on their faces. The Imperial Martial Realm. He's reached the Imperial Martial Realm. How? We're just true martial realm warriors. We can't possibly deal with an Imperial Martial Realm expert. Retreat. Hurry and retreat. Prime Minister has given the order. Anyone who retreats will die. If we can't reach the summit, only death awaits us. Countless gazes stared at Wang Chong in fear and shock, some of them even trembling in fear. From the very start, Wang Chong had killed tens of thousands of Mengshi Zhao and Uzun soldiers. Everyone believed that he would die of exhaustion, but in reality, not only had Wang Chong not fallen, he had only grown more and more frightening, even breaking into the Imperial Martial Realm in one fell swoop. Wang Chong stood atop the thousands of corpses, his hair blowing against his face, but it could not conceal his vicious, cruel, crazed, and bloodthirsty eyes. Wang Chong looked down from his vantage point. With a simple glance, cries of alarm rang out around him, the boundless and terrifying killing intent causing all the warhorses and soldiers to retreat in fear. Stand aside. I'll kill him. An icy and callous voice came from the sky, and then a massive figure descended from the sky, landing in front of Wang Chong. Clang! A massive 10-armed Bodhi appeared on the summit, its 10 arms pointed at the sky like sharp swords. At first glance, it looked like a dark golden sun. The 10-armed Bodhi was slightly bowed as it looked down at Wang Chong, its entire body exuding waves of thunderous energy. Longkinba. At this moment, the leader of the 5 tiger generals had finally arrived. Bang! Before anyone could react, a dark golden saber chi, Tensum Zhang tall, suddenly descended from the sky. At this moment, Longkinba's body hadn't even moved. In terms of speed and strength, Longkinba could show disdain for all his peers. He was only above Wang Chong, not below him. Bzzz. Longkinba was fast, but Wang Chong was no slower. Wang Chong swiftly raised his arms to block Longkinba's saber. Rumble. The mountain range trembled. In front of the dark golden 10-armed Bodhi tree, a 10-meter-long ravine appeared on the ground. Billowing smoke and dust soared into the sky and filled the mountain top. But the area in front of Wang Chong was completely calm, the ground flat. There was no sign of saber chi. Long Qinba's powerful attack had been completely blocked by Wang Chong. How could this be? He was actually able to block an attack from my Bodhi. Within the 10-armed Bodhi, Long Qinba's pupils constricted, a look of shock on his face. Other than Wang Yan, Xianyu Zhongtong, Huishu Wuzang, Duan Gechuan, and Jelifeng, the Meng, Yusang, and Yusang commanders, only Sun Luyue could contend against him. But not even Sun Luyue could use this sort of method to block his saber. He simply didn't dare to believe that a youth famed for his intelligence like Wang Chong could actually contend against him in martial arts. Just what sort of martial art does he cultivate? No one can contend against the martial arts of the Great Snow Mountain Temple. This is impossible. Long Qinba felt like he had been dealt a massive blow. Wang Chong had actually managed to advance by leaps and bounds in such a short amount of time. This completely defied the principles and common sense of martial arts. Not even the vast collection of martial arts manuals or the Great Snow Mountain Temple could do this. Brat, just what are you? Long Qinba suddenly realized that just like Prime Minister, he had completely underestimated this youth of the Tang dynasty. Nothing about him could be understood through common sense. Boom. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.